awful thing to watch. He accused the woman driving the car of resisting and claimed she violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. Within hours, the Minneapolis killing ignited protests as far away as in New York City. A manhunt is underway following a deadly mass shooting outside a Latter-day Saints meeting house in Salt Lake City last night. 2 people are confirmed dead, 6 others wounded. Salt Lake City police spokesman Glenn Mills.
There was a funeral taking place at the church. Out in the parking lot, there was some sort of altercation, and that's when shots were fired.
Police spokesman Glenn Mills says authorities continue to search for the shooter. The longest-serving Democrat in Congress is set to announce he is retiring at the end of his term. Representative Steny Hoyer of Maryland intends to deliver a House floor speech about his decision today. At 86 years old, Hoyer is the latest in a generation of senior-most leaders stepping aside, making way for a newer era of lawmakers. Global news 24 hours a day, and whenever you want it. The Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom Paul Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you so much for doing that. I've had some wonderful conversations with Congressman Hoyer over the years, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I had no idea he was 86. Steny Hoyer will be forever 73 to me because he was so vital.
You always think of him around that age because he was fighting for Obamacare at the time and all the other fights that he put up with also. But yeah, it hit me myself when I saw that he was 86.
I wonder where he is on Greenland. He's a native. His family's from Denmark.
Yeah.
So he's going to lead the charge here. I mean, you can see it, Paul. I mean, in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some movement in Congress here. There's people retiring.
I think there's a lot of movement. Yeah,
this is a Henrietta Trez thing. Like, I need the math. Like, who's...
Well, we'll get a quick
here.
Political report on our wonderful Greg Giroux as well. Our great Zach Cohen will nail this down in Washington. I thought about this a couple of days ago. I'm glad you bring it up. This retirement thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking March, April, a big deal. Stay with us across the nation on YouTube. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got futures falling. This is after President Trump followed his intervention in Venezuela with moves targeting the U.S. housing and defense industries. Let's start there. We'll go to defense stocks. They're rallying. Northrop Grumman up about 6%. Lockheed Martin up about 6%. RTX up about 4%. Home builder stocks starting to come back a bit, actually. KB Home was down about 3%. Now it's up nearly 1%. We go to Pulte Group. It was down 3%. Now down about 0.5%. And Toll Brothers, they're still down about 1%. Even Blackstone, they fell by as much as 9%. Now they're up about 0.1%. We go to NASDAQ futures, down 0.2%. S&P futures falling 0.1%. Dow futures now down about 0.4%. The 2-year yield, 3.49%. That's up 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.18%, and that's up 3 basis points. I have to point out silver, it's down nearly 5%. Copper is down nearly 2%. COMEX gold down about 0.5%. And the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index stronger by about 0.1%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. Thank you for joining. This is live streaming on January 8th. I will also re-release these videos later today on all my channels. YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe. You can also follow me on X, GETTR, Substack, TikTok, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. There are many ways to follow my work. We're live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. On my website, under broadcast, you can listen to the archived audio podcasts, watch the live streams in both formats, with the dashboard and without the dashboard. And I have a new feature called Paper, which generates news so you can read some of the breaking news that's happening around the world. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you help support the work by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, and please donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee. You could be a paid member to my Substack channel or my Patreon channel. All these videos are for free. I'm giving you information on how to improve your health and also how to manage some of the tumultuousness of the market. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store and get the Structural Nano Silver toothpaste. This toothpaste will help to neutralize, improve your oral cavity, improve the biome in your mouth. So you're reducing plaque formation. And when you're doing that, you're reducing the chances of valvular disease and vascular disease. A lot of people don't realize that poor oral hygiene, especially in your geriatric years, will lead to problems with cardiovascular health. So it's really important to improve your oral cavity. This helps to neutralize too. It's made from structural nanosilver. It's a very high quality toothpaste. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few tubes for your household. This is the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to buy. It has no fluoride. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. I also have structural nanosilver soaps, which will help to improve the health of your skin. I have them in lavender, also in peppermint, lemongrass, and charcoal tea tree. Get a few of these structural nanosilver soaps for your household. It will help to clear your skin and to neutralize. Very high quality. Please go to my store and get those. I have a discount called Discount 5, all caps, discount, the number 5. If you use it, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, with that said, let's go back to Bloomberg.
I think it will be the unemployment rate. The Fed also has in their dot plot, in their summary of economic projections, unemployment rate of 4.6, 4.7 in the fourth quarter. I think even if the unemployment rate were to surprise on the upside at 4.6, that would not be a surprise to the Fed because they have it in their outlook. If it jumps to 4.7 or 4.75, then now that's a problem.
So where are we here on this inflation versus labor market for the Fed?
Well, today we have the productivity and unit labor cost. Unit labor cost tells you the underlying signal for inflation as wages. The labor share accounts for 2/3 of this economy, right? So unit labor cost is running at negative 1.7% in the third quarter. If you smooth over a couple quarters, it might be more like 1%.
Right.
So,
Dr. Wong, stay with us. We've got to go to the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange, a special moment for Bloomberg Surveillance. We're going to come back with Anna Wong of Bloomberg Economics. Let me see, Paul. There hasn't been a yellow coat on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange since 1855.
Only Dan Ives did it.
Brooks Brothers Gray, Oxford Gray,
Yep.
Ralph Fitzgerald Gray, Gray. There's a guy in a light gray suit. And what's in the middle? Lemon.
It's just a lemon with a
And a pink hat.
and a pink hat. And that is right on brand for Mr. Dan Ives and his ETF, IVES,
Yeah.
his ETF, celebrating his ETF.
For those of you on radio, this is a special moment. It is the iconic balcony. I had the immense privilege
All right,
of
we're gonna-
standing there with
We're going
Ken-
to listen into live now about it looks like these are protesters clashing with federal agents in Minneapolis. All right, let's listen in here. This looks like it's live. I'll tell you, the whole country is a powder keg. Something big is coming this year, all right? And I've been stating this all the way back to November of 2024. I said that on September 11th, 2026 is going to open up a gate, and that gate that's open doesn't close back until the beginning of October of 2027. And when that gate opens, there's a curse coming. And it's not just for the country, it's the whole world will be cursed. The whole world is going to be cursed during this period of time. And you're going to start seeing that there's the whole country, the whole world is starting to build up this potential energy that's going to lead to something not very good. Okay, let's go back to Bloomberg here. Go back to the jobs report.
Construction, particularly at specialty trade construction, is booming right now. And I think that is a sign of data center related hiring. The other place you can see AI showing up is in the household survey in unemployment. And we are seeing a surge of unemployment in software, mathematician, these STEM, quant jobs, which most likely is related to a technological advancement type of reduced labor demand.
So the labor market, how do you characterize the clients? It feels like it's still pretty darn good. Maybe not as good as 12 months ago, but pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it has. I think whether it will continue to stabilize, because at the end of 2025, I think it has stabilized, but whether it can continue depends on whether the Fed will keep cutting, and if the Fed should keep rates on hold for the first 6 months of this year,
Right.
I think that will generate some headwinds again on the labor market. It's just very fragile.
I have 20 precious seconds. Is a 4.6 unemployment rate now the same as a 4.6 unemployment rate 20 years ago?
No, because 4.6 now feels like 5.6, just because the labor participation is also lower. So more people are not working today than 20 years ago.
To you, and I must say this, also Analog has put together a spectacular team.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Which definitely, it's not just about Analog.
No.
Bloomberg Economics, for those with the terminal and frankly outside the terminal, look for their pristine work on LinkedIn as well. They're very good at, Michael McDonough does the charts.
That's a great chart.
I mean, they're like Howard Johnson's 28 flavors of colors.
No, these Bloomberg economics people are everywhere.
They're everywhere, and they're, in London and over in the continent as well, and Asia.
A
Analog,
lot of numbers.
leading our coverage here. The Dow negative 78, SPX down 11. We are trading, we are open. 15.77. A little bit of tension out there. Don't want to oversell it, but there it is. 10-year yield, 4.18%.
All right, so
on YouTube.
the market, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,910. It's a little down, little bit. I still have a target of 7,400 for this year to 7,800 for the S&P 500. I'm a little concerned of VIX spiking in the beginning of February, maybe late January. Now, VIX right now is trading at 15.79, so it's stable. Dollar relative to the euro, 1.16. So euro USD 1.16. Oil is trading at 57.20. Bitcoin is trading at 89,900. Oh, it just went to 90,000. And USD Japanese yen 157. Natural gas is trading at 3.44. Okay, in terms of energy, I still have a target of 56 to 60 for oil, WTI. So we're near the bottom range of the trading. Some analysts are saying that it's going to go to low 50s, high 40s. If it goes there, I don't think it's going to stay there for very long, so that's probably a good buy. But right now I have a trading range of 58 to 60. The reason being, even though there's a lot of oil on the market, there's tension in Iran. We still don't know if Venezuela will be stable. And there's tension in Asia. What will happen with the peace agreement between Putin and Zelensky? I don't think it's going to happen. So I think there's going to be upward pressure to move oil up because of tensions geopolitically. Even though there's a lot of oil on the market as of right now, and that's due to OPEC Plus producing more barrels of oil than was really needed during 2025. Now in natural gas, it's been drifting down. It's at 3.4 right now. As we get closer to the spring season, it's going to be in probably the high 2s, probably 2.8, 2.6, somewhere in there. So 3.4 right now. We may drift back up because January and February are cold months. So if we get a cold spell, we might see natural gas pop again. Right now, I'm longing natural gas and I'm longing oil. Now, in terms of Gush is up right now. It's trading at 21.55. Those are for oil exploration companies. That's an ETF. And DRIP is the short for that. And that's down right now. And that's trading at about 9.15. All right. So right now we're probably, the jobs report was better than expected. Inflation is somewhat controlled. There's probably a decent probability that the Federal Reserve will cut rates this year. The question is it 1 or 2? Is it going to be, 50 basis points total or just 25? I suspect that we may have 2 cuts, but you would really have to have the employment numbers to deteriorate. I think inflation is somewhat controlled. So until there's a signal from the Federal Reserve that they're going to be cutting rates soon, we may be trading sideways with the S&P 500. Now there's a major resistance point at 7,000 for the S&P 500, and you're seeing this play out. It's trying to inch up to 7,000 and it comes back down. Inches up to 7,000, comes back down. So that's a major resistance level. But once it breaks it, it's going to be a major support level. Okay, with that, let's listen into live now here. See what's going on.
At least for me, some are, yes, but they're not.
Look at me! You're gonna be such a brave guy! Look at me!
Oh, we're not anarchists, you stupid scum! This isn't anarchy, this is laws out having a military out in the open, a police force out in the open, so I'm not fucking secret. Yeah, you guys are like scumbags. You're like scumbags, the worst of the lot. You're like, this is not democracy. Democracy isn't a bunch of thugs coming around here throwing tear gas in my face and beating me up. That's not democracy, you fucks. This is democracy. Americans, not you guys. You're un-American fucks. You're un-American Nazi scum who don't deserve to be here. We all deserve to be here. So what the fuck? If you guys didn't have guns, you know you'd be gone. You know you'd be out of here. If you guys didn't have well, hang on. You'd be gone so fast. I'm not going to be there. We can all kick your fucking asses in 1 second if you didn't have this shit on. You would be running to the hills. They have no soul. Yeah, we're soul. I know. I need to get this off. They're so lost in their.
And people are so focused on this, they're not really paying attention to literally what is going on in the real world. What is going to affect your life more? Do you think that this is going to affect your life? Absolutely not. Do you think that what the Federal Reserve is doing is going to affect your life in years to come? Absolutely. 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 You know, unfortunately, you know, this is happening, but it, you know, it shouldn't. The bottom line is this. The police and the Homeland Security and federal officers, they're there because what started this whole thing was illegal immigration. And illegal immigrants should leave. They should be forced to leave if they don't do it themselves. If they don't voluntarily leave, they should be forced to leave. Illegal immigrants should not be in this country, period. This would never have started if there wasn't illegal immigration. Never would have started. All right, let's go back to what's really going to affect your life.
Because of Zoom, I'm asking for Lisa.
Well, my students at Touch are all executives, so their parents are all retired. So I hope that they're not training. But it's, you know, I prefer in person. In person, there's just it's more fun. Like there's more of a vibe to it.
Totally agree. We see that in the studio here. I gotta bring this up. Picking Presidents, folks, rave reviews for his book, Picking Presidents. And so you come down, and the conclusion is, where do we go from here? Here's where we go. The entire nation, whatever their politics, tunes into James Kimmel on YouTube at 9 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m. It's like Johnny Carson years ago, except you're watching Jimmy Kimmel tear up a president. How does Picking Presidents change with the social media, the immediacy of someone like Jimmy Kimmel on YouTube?
It changes in that the role that Picking Presidents was, you know, Big Chuck was historical, saying that the party leaders, the party elites who used to have a big say in who became president. And that say, while it wasn't perfect, was actually really important and really valuable because it allowed them to look at some people and just say, this person has no business in the White House. You shouldn't even let them in on a tour, and we need to stop them. That role has fallen apart. It just doesn't exist anymore. Like if Republican Party elites could have stopped Donald Trump in 2016, they would have done. and they couldn't. And so what that tells us is we need to figure out, and we have completely failed at that job, we need to figure out new ways to evaluate people through these new social media tools, because right now we don't have it.
Well, I mean, the other side of the equation would be Donald Trump is representative of the U.S., and that's why he won twice, and that's why he's in the White House right now. And that may or may not be true. I guess one of the things just in the last week with Venezuela, that brings this Greenland discussion back to the front, because I was probably representative of a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's just talk. I'm not going to worry about it." Now I think you really have to put it on the front burner and start talking about this.
And every conversation I've had for the last year that's touched on Greenland with people who have any insight into the Trump administration said, no, this is very serious.
Okay.
And it's like the strategic meaningless of this has to be emphasized, right? There is nothing that the United States would get out of owning Greenland that it does not already have. Denmark is a NATO ally. If we want to put more troops in Greenland, if we want to put more bases in Greenland, all we had to do was pick up the phone.
They would encourage that, is my reading.
They would love to have us do that. The United States has 150 troops in Greenland right now because there's not actually any reason to have any more. When we've tried to establish permanent bases, we found out that working on top of 2 miles of ice is actually a nightmare, and we don't know how to do it.
Yale University, the joy of Gautam Mukunda, and then you go down the hall in history and get a seminar with Timothy Snyder. I mean, this is the way they roll at Yale, folks. This is like Jonathan Spence and Robert Schiller a bit ago. Tim Snyder writing in Project Syndicate, the single sentence gun, which is like you wrote it. U.S. President Donald Trump wants the political gains of fighting a war without actually having to fight one. Timothy Snyder, discuss.
Yeah, I think that's right, except there aren't really political gains from fighting a war anymore. Right, George H.W. Bush, who fought the last war that everyone in America agrees was a complete success, 1991, lost in 1992, right? Even the political benefits from getting Osama bin Laden for Barack Obama vanished from the opinion polling in about 3 months, right? So the Venezuela engagement, which even after a 17-point spike in polling, because the American public likes it when military operations go well, is still way underwater, right? It's not. There are no political benefits from doing things that are way underwater, and those numbers are going to go down with time as it becomes clear that we're not getting any real benefits from this. And then again with the Greenland thing, like if we were actually to invade Greenland, the level of strategic catastrophe this would impose on the United States is just unimaginable, right? Europeans would have to react in any number of ways. We can lay out what they are, but they would all devastate. But even talking about it makes American diplomacy essentially a dead letter. Right? So this was when we were discussing security guarantees in Ukraine. A journalist asked a very good question. We've had security guarantees with Denmark since 1947. How can any security guarantee that the United States makes be trusted when there is a 50-50 chance every 4 years that we will elect someone who completely ignores them? If I were in charge of foreign policy for any other country, I would say that China, at the moment, is a vastly more reliable country than the United States is. And that's a huge problem for us.
How come the Democrats aren't seizing on the fact that all these geopolitical activities of President Trump and his administration and are not really what they care about? And what they care about is kind of economics and inflation and stuff like that. I'm surprised they're not using that while your president is spending time on Greenland and Venezuela, you're struggling at home. How come I don't see that message?
I am too, and I think you're seeing some attempts at it, right? You're seeing people say, like, why is he talking about Venezuela when we're talking about affordability, things like that. But one is, Donald Trump is the greatest earned media talent of all time, right? So any Democratic attempts to
since there's a time, Paul, your question is absolutely brilliant. Let me cut to the chase. They're still getting over McGovern 72. That's all there is to it. This is all about Vietnam. It's 100%. They want to ignore because they got it wrong back then. And they've spent literally, Governor, you tell me, you're the expert, 2-3 decades going, how about that inflation?
Yeah. No, so, Democrats sort of have this feeling that they can never be on the wrong side of being.
But it's been critical. We're talking about liberals. We're not talking about core Democrats outside the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette region.
Yeah. They can never be on the wrong side of a conflict, meaning the side that's against sort of escalation. They've learned this, and the amazing thing is they've learned this even though modern history points the other direction. Barack Obama became president of the United States because he was out against the Iraq War, right? Like if he had not done that, there is no possibility he beats Hillary.
Same with Clinton. Did Clinton win because he took a different tack than the Detrius of the McGovern era?
No, I think Clinton won in 92 because nobody cared about foreign policy anymore. And that may actually be the reason, the answer to Paul's question. The Democratic Party has decided that unless we are, people are dying by the thousands, people just don't.
You're asking too many good questions today. You cannot go to the Caribbean on vacation.
Yeah, the brain will solve.
Lisa, do we agree?
Yes, he cannot go.
You cannot
Kick
go.
it back
Okay.
with the Balashi beer.
What are you doing after picking presidents?
We're going to listen in to CNN talking about the shooting that happened yesterday. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver drops. These will help mitigate throat irritation. It's really important to take right when you have that irritant. This works very well during the cold season and also during the allergy season. Stock up. You can get it in cherry flavor, blueberry, and also in honey and lemon. Very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver drops. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. If you're around someone that's not feeling well because of the cold season, take them prophylactically to make sure you are secreting and protecting your oropharynx. Really, really important. Please go to my store, stock up, get a few bags for your household and for work.
If you're not using Navan to manage your fleet travel, you're missing out. Why? Here are 5 ways Navan helps your company save money with smarter travel. Everything travel in one platform. Flights, hotel.
My witness of the shooting speaking out tonight, her name is Emily Heller. She lives on the street where the shooting happened, and she filmed video that we have here just now to share with you out front. It shows the chaos immediately after Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed by that ICE agent in Minneapolis hours ago. We're going to play it for you. I do want to warn you that it is graphic.
Can I go check a pulse? No! Back up! Now! I'm a physician! Hey, understand. We got EMS coming. I get it. Just give us a second. We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relate to you? You killed my neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the man?
Emily Heller is out front now, who you heard there and filmed that in that horrifically traumatic moment.
Now let's get this
so
straight.
I know you live there. This is your.
Does she look like she's a conservative? Now, if they're taking away her neighbors, if they're picking the neighbors up and shipping them to another country, they're illegal. They're not supposed to be there. So they're illegal neighbors. Now, the one that got shot, that's a different story. Now, my understanding is that the one that was shot was from a different state. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. I'm not sure. I don't think everyone has the facts or all the facts. But she doesn't dress like a conservative. She dresses like a liberal. Her hair is like a liberal. Now, what's sad is that Erin, she, on CNN, before she started working for CNN, she worked for CNBC, a business channel. But she wasn't making enough money, so she had to, be an anchor for herself. And so she went to CNN. And then she has been nothing but a never Trumper. So let's see how this all plays out. But the bottom line is that the government is rounding up the illegals. If you're in the way, don't be surprised that you get hurt. You shouldn't be in the way.
This is your home, and you're inside your house. You hear all of this commotion. Everything is starting to happen. Okay, can you tell me what happened then? You hear everything. You come outside, and then what?
I hadn't even gotten dressed. I was making breakfast. I went out, I heard the commotion. I heard whistles, which is a common sign of ice is nearby. And I went out onto my front porch. I didn't even have shoes on. And within.
Heard whistles. Wait a minute. Who was blowing the whistle? Was it the ICE agents blowing the whistle, or were neighborhood watchers waiting for ICE, telling people, oh, wait a minute, ICE is around. If you got illegals, hide them.
Within 60 seconds, everything had already gone down. But there was an ICE convoy that seemed to be stuck, and then there was a protester who was blocking traffic, so they couldn't progress. And she was totally peaceful, and ICE, it seemed completely unorganized. They didn't really know what they were doing. They were screaming at her to move, move, move. And then they approached her vehicle aggressively and tried to open her door. And then that's when she got spooked, and she reversed her vehicle to turn her wheels to try to escape. And that's when an ICE agent stepped in front of her vehicle and said, stop. And then, I mean, she was already moving, and then point blank shot her through her windshield in the face.
I can't imagine what it was to see that, Emily. The way that you are laying this out, though, I just want to repeat, make sure that I'm clear.
I want to make sure that someone on a mainstream network like CNN makes the statement, was the driver that was shot from the area or not? And if she wasn't from the area, was she one of these professional protesters? What's the story? What's the story?
If I say anything wrong, you're saying that what you saw was disorganized ICE, but then when they tried to get her to stop, she got spooked. She reversed her car to turn her wheels to get away.
You also have to remember, these ICE agents are constantly in harm's way because of out of control protesters, peaceful protesters. So of course, eventually something like this happens. Now, these professional protesters are being told, just keep on doing this because an event will happen. Oh, you know, if it's you and you die, well, you know, you're dying for the cause. The bottom line is that illegals are in the country. They need to get the hell out. ICE is trying to round them up and get rid of them. All of them need to go. All of them. No matter how long you've been here. No matter if you have an anchor baby. I don't care. If you're illegal, you need to get out. Period. Now, if you're in the way of law enforcement doing their job, don't be surprised that something bad happens. There was this film, maybe they'll play it later. There was this film where one of the agents shot some sort of like canister of gas or colored material onto a black protester's face. But if you watch what happened just before that, it looked like the black guy was going for the gun. Now, I think he was just, first of all, if you're a protester, you shouldn't be engaging with physicality against a trooper. All right? That's number one, you shouldn't do. But misunderstandings could easily take place in milliseconds. And if you watch that video really closely, the officer thought the guy was going after his gun before he shot him in the face. Now, that's not what happened with this woman. It's totally different. But this is this protester that's walking on the sidewalk, black, taller than the trooper. He gets in, he gets physical with the trooper, and you do slow motion, frame by frame. The officer was concerned about him going after the gun. And so he shot him in the face, but it's just a canister of gas or of clouded material. All right. So no harm was done to the black protester. But this is getting worse. When you have protesters engaging in physicality against the troopers, don't be surprised that they get shot. When you have a problem, no matter what the problem is, aircraft falls out of the sky, your car engine doesn't start, the stock market isn't working for you, or this issue with the woman that's shot in the face and dies in her car. What's the root cause? The root cause isn't she gets shot and she dies. Or let's start it from the very beginning of the logic here. She dies. Why did she die? She was shot in the face. Why was she shot in the face? Because she was blocking the road. Why was she blocking the road? It looked like that she was part of the protesting, but maybe she had some issue with the ice on the ground. Who knows? The officer went to her door to tell her to get out. She didn't do it. She decided to start driving. Why did she decide to start driving? Because she was scared. Okay. She saw that there was an officer in front of her. She thought it was okay to just move towards the officer in front of her. And the officer already, the other officer already had his hands in the vehicle while she's moving. So if you keep on going back, okay, why did the officer go to her door? Well, she was blocking. Why was she blocking? Well, she believed, let's just assume that she thought that it was her right to just block the road and impede law enforcement. But maybe, it was just the ice on the road. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But the thing is why was she there? It looked like she was protesting. And why was she protesting? Oh, she thinks that illegals should not be, she doesn't think that ICE should be there. Okay. Why does she feel that ICE shouldn't be there? Because they want to take illegals out. Okay. Why is ICE trying to take illegals out? Because illegals are in the country. Why are illegals in the country? Because we had a porous border that allowed them to come here. So if you get to the root cause of this, the root cause isn't the officer shooting her in the face and her dying. The root cause is illegal immigration. That's the whole point that I'm making here. You have to use first principles and get down to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem isn't out of control ICE agents. Even the root cause isn't out of control protesters. The root cause is illegal immigration. Now, why do we have illegal immigration? What was the root cause of that? Out of control Democratic Party trying to play games with the census, playing games with money flowing into the school system because it's based on pupil head, not citizenry. And these states that have sanctuary cities, they are bleeding citizens. That means that they will lose over time representation in the House. And when they lose representation in the House, other seats go to states that have accreted more population. And those states typically are red states. So they have to have illegal immigration, faking the census for the money to flow, and eventually the push for amnesty to be able to control the House seats. Or the states will lose them because it's based on population. That's why. So the whole root cause of illegal immigration is because of an out-of-control Democratic Party. But we'll spend time about all the details about, was the officer 16 degrees, 90 degrees, or 45 degrees to the windshield, and not really pay attention to the real issue here. The real issue is illegal immigration and an out-of-control political party that's trying to take advantage of the situation.
And that was when the officer stepped in front.
They were telling her to leave. They were telling her to move, and
Yeah,
then all of
she
a sudden
should've.
they were seemed like they were trying to get her. So they were telling her to move, and then in a split second.
I don't know if that plate is a Minnesota plate. Maybe people, I don't know. I don't know, you know. And she has an awful lot of stickers on the windshield where I don't know what the hell that is. And why is she driving a Honda? She should be driving an American car. What the hell's wrong with this woman?
They were trying to get her out of the car. So it was like she was trying to move once they were trying to get in her car. She was of course she wanted to leave at that point. They were extremely aggressive. Yeah,
She would have been scared, obviously. You know, President Trump, as you know, posted.
But the thing is that you have to remember, it's not this specific incident. You have to think about all the other incidences with these officers as they have belligerent protesters that they have to deal with. And I'll tell you, I don't think that the officer did anything wrong. It's a shame that she died. She shouldn't have had to die. But the thing is she shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been there. And she should have had the common sense to listen to the officer. She should have had the common sense. Well, wait a minute here. She should have had the common sense to like stay out of the region so you don't get hurt. No, it looked like that maybe she was protesting, but maybe she wasn't. Maybe she's just an innocent bystander. But she should have had the common sense that she should have listened to the officer. It did get out of control really quick. But if you look at the other angle, not this angle, not the driver's side, rear driver's side angle here on the car, but looking at it from the front, there's another video that's showing the front. It's blurry. It looks like a camera maybe from a home, but it's blurry. But it looked like that the car was lunging forward to the officer that had the gun. All right? It's hard to see it in this angle because it's blocked. So if you take all of this in totality, maybe she should have not been there. You know, number one rule, if there is like potential of conflict, try to de-escalate it by not being there. But look, we have a lot of illegal aliens in the United States. And I think all of them need to get the hell out of this country. All of them. Now, we're so focused on this woman. She was shot by ICE or by some law enforcement. I think it's an ICE officer, but she's shot by law enforcement. She dies. And these protesters, they're trying to protect the illegal alien and to push back on government. Where was the protesting? Where was the protesting when women couldn't get Infamil during the Biden administration? They're willing to protest for illegals, but women weren't willing to protest because of Biden's missteps with getting infant nutrients, and women were having problems buying it. If you remember, in the early part of Biden's administration, women couldn't get infant meal. There wasn't mass protests like this. Why? Why? Why is the illegal immigrant more important than your baby? Oh, wait a minute. Did we have something like this where there was a galvanization of countrywide pushing back on what the government was doing during the COVID time frame? No. Did you have individuals pushing back on corporations? No. But you'll have individuals pushing back for illegal aliens. So let me get this straight. Forced inoculations, you weren't willing to, as a society, push back. So because society didn't push back with kinetic means, many people were forced to take it. Okay? To take the inoculation because people weren't willing to fight back. People weren't willing to fight back to feed their kid. People weren't willing to fight back when it became knowledgeable that there was inadequate testing for the inoculation and that there was nefarious weapon development that was taking place. They didn't fight back, protest, and tell Congress that these things need to stop. No. They'll get a celebrity doc and they'll have a conference and they'll talk about, what they think is going on. Maybe release a paper that says something about, some of the nefarious things that were going on. That's not how you solve the problem. And obviously, things happened and now people are harmed because there wasn't a kinetic pushback. I would think that pushing back kinetically on what we went through in 2020 was far more important than this. Pushing back when you can't feed your kid is far more important than illegal aliens. So why is it that there's so much love and so much energy and so much willingness to push back against the government when it's for an illegal alien? But you're not willing to push back for your own health? You're not willing to push back on shutting down the nefarious aspects to defense and weapon development? Why don't you push back on nuclear weapons? Why do you have cognitive dissonance for nuclear weapons? Why do you have cognitive dissonance on biological or chemical warfare? Why do you have cognitive dissonance to feed your own kid? But you'll spend all the time protecting illegal aliens. And when something bad happens, then mainstream media will only focus on that incident and not look at the big picture like, why did this happen? What was the root cause? The root cause isn't an out-of-control ICE agent. It's not even an out-of-control citizen. It's an out-of-control policy that allowed for illegal immigration to take hold. That's the root cause. So why? Why is there so many people willing to protest against ICE? Oh, it's because Trump is in office. Because everything Trump does must be bad. Yet the most important thing during 2020 to protest, he didn't do it. Didn't do it. And life would be totally different for many people if people galvanized at the very beginning of 2020 to stop it. It's too late. It's too late now. They don't even need your permission for an inoculation. You don't even need to go to CVS or Walgreens. All you got to do is eat food. All you got to do is breathe air, go outside during the summer and get bit by a mosquito. You have no recourse now. None. Zero. But we'll focus on illegal aliens.
It's lucky the ICE agent was alive, and I just want to be clear, the ICE agent is walking afterwards, and we know that from any anything that he had in the hospital, he's fine, he's out. But President Trump
he
posted.
stood there.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you're gonna say about what he did afterwards.
Oh, he just stood there. The other ICE agents surrounded him. He was obviously spooked too. I mean, they seem like children. They seem like untrained people. And so.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
People. And so that agent was obviously spooked because he had just killed someone, and it was very obvious to everyone who had witnessed it all that she would not make it. And so they kind of gathered around him, and then there was a gold SUV that came, and they put him in it and got him out of there because everyone knew he had murdered someone.
So President Trump says the woman was disorder obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. He shared a video of the incident from a different angle. What's your response to that version of events?
I mean, that's the only reason why I'm here. I don't think I'm the most articulate person. I don't think that I don't want to be here, but I knew that this would be twisted and it would be self-defense, and that's absolutely not what happened. But it's just my life is forever changed from having witnessed this, and I just can't let this narrative that it was self-defense go any further, because it's absolutely not what it was. And yeah, my neighborhood, my neighbors, we're all going to be pretty traumatized from this for a long time.
Yeah, they're a liberal. They always are traumatized.
When in that video that you shared with us that I just played, the 34 seconds, you're obviously incredibly distraught, and there's a doctor next to you or near you. You hear him saying, "I'm a physician. I can help," and they say, "No, we have our own medics." But the doctor is there offering to administer CPR, standing right there. I don't want you to have to relive what you were looking at when the horror of her death, but how did agents respond to him? Was there a speed and a desperation in trying to get any sort of assistance to her? Because it didn't sound like that from what you gave us.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him near, and they said they had their own medics that were on their way, which it was, I mean, I don't know, it was at least 15 minutes before the ambulance arrived, and then the ambulance couldn't even get through because the ICE agents had all abandoned their vehicles in the road, so the ambulance couldn't get through. So they parked at the end of the block, and about 5 paramedics came in and examined her for, I didn't see this, but they were with her for a few minutes, and then they carried her limp body away by her limbs, not even on a stretcher. Just carried her down to the end of the block where they could get a stretcher because they couldn't get through with their ambulance.
Emily, I appreciate your talking about this. I know it has to be incredibly difficult, and I think everyone understands why you're choosing to do it, to make sure people understand exactly what it is that you saw and documented, and I appreciate you being willing to do it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Joey, you heard what Emily had to say, and
why don't we have protests when women couldn't feed their kid? Why? But we'll have protests for illegal immigrants.
She said, I don't want to be here, but I'm here because I want everyone to know what I saw. And she's very clear about what she saw.
Listen, it's got to be a very traumatic experience. What I'm concerned about, though, is the nature of the investigation. Let's be clear that there are going to be, of course, local officials investigating this, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, in addition to the federal government. In the event that there's anything federal here, of course, then Trump would have the power to pardon. We're not there yet. There's not been a prosecution. There's not been an indictment. There's not been a criminal charge levied. However, in the event that it goes that way, I think it's very important that the community gets a sense of fairness, a sense of justice. And in the event that it is federal, of course, there would be, according to Trump and what he put out already, he's judged that there's nothing to see here. And so if the locals get it, what will they do? Will they move forward? And if they move forward, what will that look like? Would it look like a, actual prosecution? And what would be the prosecution here? Criminal negligence, intent? We'll see.
Gil, I'm curious too. Emily was talking about you.
I think the officer did the right thing.
I understand that in the moment like this, right, there's the most important thing about this country is a country of rules and laws. And if they're not upheld in one horrific part of something, doesn't mean that they should also be dropped in another. In that context, even with that said, though, when the physician says, I can help, and he's right there, and maybe at that point it appears to everybody she's dead, but to take 15 minutes for someone to get there and to not allow someone who might be able to administer CPR, that just on a human level, that's really hard to hear.
Well, if you do have paramedics that are trained, and I believe ICE and CBP, Customs and Border Protection, has people that are trained, and they're right there, that can be a help. I think you're always going to be, as a law enforcement officer, maybe a little suspicious of the person that said, wait, I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, I can help, etc. I mean, I think they could have been handled much better. But if they did have the paramedics there immediately on the scene, they're going to give her treatment.
Right, of course, they said it was 15 minutes, but the trauma there that you heard, the trauma.
Yeah, I mean, that's what struck me. There's two things that struck me. First of all, just how horrific to witness this on your street, right? And then the second thing is her characterization of the behavior of the ICE agents, the lack of training.
I've seen a lot of carnage, and I'll tell you, you know what? People have now become numb because of horror films and just the way society is. So anyone says that they're so shocked that they saw something, well, you know what? Most people are desensitized to it now because of the realistic effects of horror films. I'm so shocked. Her life will be just fine. God, you know, that's going forward. The ones that survived it. But you know, the reality of the situation is this. What's the root cause of the problem? The root cause of the problem is that we have illegals in here and we're trying to get rid of them. What about how much harm? I mean, let's think about this. Has ICE agents caused more harm to legal citizens, or has illegal aliens caused more harm to other citizens? Which way is it? Let's tally it up. Deaths from ICE, where ICE caused the death of a citizen, an American citizen, versus an illegal alien causing the death of an American citizen. I'm willing to bet that it was the death from an illegal alien is much higher. Why don't we have that discussion? No, of course not, because Trump's always bad.
What if you could clean your retainer at the touch of a button? No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team of engineers knew there had to be a quicker, easier, and more effective way to deep clean oral appliances.
And we actually see the car.
This is
from the. Welcome back.
Okay. I didn't stop.
Security is calling this an act. The officers were trying to get her out of the car.
Let's try this again.
Welcome back. Well, an ICE officer fatally shot a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis yesterday. Authorities say she used her vehicle to try and run over federal officers during an enforcement operation. Take a look. The Department of Homeland Security is calling this an act of domestic terrorism. The officers were trying to get her out of the car. She ignored their order and slammed the gas pedal. And obviously, another agent saw this and reacted and shot him. President Trump posted on Truth Social, "I have just viewed the clip. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting. The president said she viciously ran over the officer." Take a look at the video from another angle. We've got a different angle here because we want to really get to the bottom of this. This is the first video that we saw where the officers are trying to get her out of the car. She ignores them. Here's another video from the front, and we actually see the car from the front,
actually hitting an officer in the leg, and he walks away partly limping. The video obviously is part of an investigation that the
It looks
FBI
like she hit the officer.
is doing. Protests broke out across the country after the shooting. Several Democrats immediately called this murder, even before the investigation took place, even before the FBI could actually investigate. Joining me now is Ohio Congressman and Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Mr. Chairman, your reaction to this deadly shooting?
Well, this ICE officer was defending himself and his colleagues, and instead of elected officials on the other side criticizing him. Maybe they should stop promoting what we've seen now for this whole year, which is you have rioters and others interfering with federal law enforcement officials doing their job. They're doxing them, they're harassing them, they're interfering with them when they're actually out there trying to do their job as enforcers of federal law. And then it all goes back to this jurisdiction where they're sanctuary jurisdictions, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. And again, that I think has just led to this terrible situation where someone lost their life. But the officer is defending himself, defending his colleagues as they're trained to do. But the left is they're gonna say what they're gonna say. I mean, think about how bad it was, Maria. Last year you had the judge in Milwaukee. The good guys are coming in the front door to arrest the bad guy, and she lets him go out the back door. That's what happens when you have this left-wing mindset in these sanctuary jurisdictions. It is ridiculous, and I think the country understands that.
Well, I mean, one is dead, and yet instead of, toning it down, the Democrats are ramping it up in terms of the rhetoric. And I mean, after, Charlie Kirk was murdered, President Trump had 2 assassination attempts. When is this going to stop? And yet yesterday, after this happened and protesters broke out, the FBI doesn't even begin the investigation, and yet this is what we hear all over television. Watch this.
What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head while she was trying to escape and flee for her life.
Sadly, this was not unexpected, but it is egregious. It was an outright murder.
That officers murdered a woman in her car.
She resisted the officer. That was the problem.
The left always calls law enforcement the bad guys for actually doing their job, protecting themselves, defending themselves, defending their colleagues. But they never will call the person who was resisting arrest. That's obvious from the video. The person who was engaged in this rioting, who was resisting arrest, who ran their car towards an offense, they're never at fault. So I don't understand that mindset. I think most Americans don't understand that mindset. But today's left, I will never forget a few years ago when Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders gave the response to the State of the Union, and she said the divide in America today is normal versus crazy. And every position the left takes seems to be crazy. They always they never side with law enforcement.
That's right.
They're
Liberals are nuts.
They're the ones for open borders. They're the ones who has the guy who's now the mayor of our largest city, who says we got to get rid of rugged individualism and replace it with collectivism. Like, what? That's not America. I mean, so every position they take is crazy. You just see it time and time again. The people have common sense, and as I said before, I think the American people understand what's really going on.
Well, I don't know what Mamdani and his housing official were talking about the other day. To your point, you work your whole life to afford to buy a home. You buy a home, and then you got to hear from this person who just got the job as a housing official in New York City that you're going to have a new relationship with your property. That it's got to be collectivism. Are we supposed to be letting in strangers and sharing our home? I mean, I have no idea what that
with your property. Yeah, new relationship with your property. I think we used to call that stealing. But this, get rid of this rugged individualism that made America the greatest country ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of like Lewis and Clark, the Wright brothers. I think about that. That's America, and replace it with communism, with collectivism. Yeah. That is frightening stuff. But this is the guy who's their party, who just got elected to the largest city in our country. And it just goes to show again how crazy the left is. I think this midterm election coming up, Maria, is so simple.
Tell the American people what we've done for them. Cut their taxes, secured the border. President Trump has made sure Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, and on we can go. And then never forget to always remind them how crazy the left is. They want to defund the police. They want an open border and everything else.
Well, in an election year, it's even worse because the Democrats are watching every comment made that it might affect, November and the midterms. Look, you said it just then. You've got your work and your policy changes to show the American people going into the midterms. So why did the president the other day talk to you and your colleagues and say, look, they're going to impeach me if you don't win the midterms? Is this a messaging problem? The policies seem to be working. The economy's doing well. It feels good. And yet people are worried about affordability. And you're worried about the president getting impeached and the Democrats taking over in November?
Well, you're right. The economy is, I think, what we had like 4% growth last quarter. Gas prices are coming down. I think you'll see other prices begin to come down that are going to help families, particularly younger families looking to buy that first home. So I think we got an amazing. Go tell them what we've done. Tell them what we're going to continue to do, which will help on the cost of goods and services out there. And as I said, remind the voters how crazy the left is. That is this campaign, in my judgment. But if we don't win, President Trump's right, because for a decade now they went after him. And if they get to control the House, there'll be impeachment number 3 from these guys. We know that's coming. That's why it's incumbent upon us to make sure we do everything we can to keep the House and keep these good policies coming for the American people.
And the House Oversight Committee held a hearing on Minnesota's fraud yesterday. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer warned that Governor Tim Walz could end up in handcuffs over his role in this alleged scheme. AG Pam Bondi dispatched more federal prosecutors to the state to dig deeper into the potential misuse of federal money. Congressman, you pressed a Minnesota state lawmaker at the hearing. Let's take a watch.
All right, so I'm going to go to March 30th. All right, so I'm going to go to March 30th, 2021. Is it true back in March of 2021, the Minnesota Department of Education suspended payments to Feeding Our Future, that program? Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
And then a month later, they resumed payments.
That's correct.
What caused them to change their mind?
In my opinion, what caused them to change their mind was pushback from their constituency within the Somali community who accused the state agencies of being racist.
But what caused them to stop it in the first place? Was it whistleblowers coming forward?
The reason they stopped the funds in the first place is because they had credible allegations that there was fraud taking place.
From whistleblowers and others. They're
Correct.
just doing their job. Looking, this doesn't make sense. We got all these programs, no one's getting fed, yet money's going out the door like crazy. So they suspended it, and then they started it back up. Right? Was there any threat of a lawsuit from the Somali community and folks affiliated with Feeding Our Future?
Mr. Jordan, there was more than a threat. They actually did it.
They did? And what was the alleged claim in that lawsuit?
That they were victims of racial discrimination.
Oh, they played the race card, huh? All this fraud going on, money going out, and they played the race card. Now, was when I talked about not just overlooking it.
So Congressman, now what? I mean, and Nick Shirley uncovers all this fraud, daycare centers with no kids in them, all this money going to the daycare centers, and they're not even operating, and you've got this hearing. What did you learn yesterday?
Well, we learned how pervasive this was. Over 15 years, we learned from those lawmakers from Minnesota, and they were taking down the American taxpayer from all different federal agencies. I mean, agencies involved: Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, Housing, Urban Development, Health and Human Services, Small Business Administration. So I think it was 6 different federal agencies where American tax dollars were being just taken by fraudsters in Minnesota. Well, now here's the good news. There are 2 other federal agencies now involved, namely the FBI and the Department of Justice. And 68 people have been indicted. 2 people affiliated with that program have already been indicted, convicted, and are in jail awaiting sentencing. So the Justice Department is getting involved as well. They should.
All right, we will be watching all of that. Are you saying that there will be criminal
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the new product that I have, Super Strong Relief. This is for individuals that have sore muscles, sore joints. This also helps with headaches. You apply it to your skin, and that will help to relieve the pain. It's temporary relief, but it works very fast. So please go to my store, get this Super Strong Relief to reduce the pain from bruises, muscle aches, joint pain, and also headaches. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Also, get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, reduce the stress on your pancreas to allow you to absorb your nutrients with less stress on your body. No matter how healthy you are, as you get older, your pancreas won't perform as well as when it was younger. Taking the digestive enzyme complex will help you to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids for easier digestion. In addition, this has bromelain in it. It will help to break up clots, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins, which is very important, especially during the cold season. Vitamin D3. It's a gene expression cofactor. It also helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium, and if you do resistance training, it'll help you to build bone density. Take vitamin D3 every day. An added benefit of vitamin D3 is it helps with your cardiovascular health. Resveratrol. Resveratrol is something I've been taking for decades. It soaks up free radicals, helps the health of the mitochondria. You'll have more energy for your cell, less stress in the cell. It helps with youthful gene expression, and it helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Resveratrol, especially if you stack it with C60, will help the basal layer of your skin. This is the reason why if you take resveratrol over a long duration, many years, you'll start to notice that skin health is much better compared to individuals that don't. You age slower with the resveratrol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. And since we are in the cold season, you better start paying attention, get the magnesium and zinc, take it every day, boost up that immune system. Also boost up the immune system with vitamin C and magnesium. You can stack these together, and there's added benefits. With vitamin C, it helps with your skin health, and magnesium will help with brain function. It's really important. Many people are not taking enough magnesium for proper brain function. So as part of your NeuroStack, you should be taking the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium, and it's dual purpose. You're helping your skin, you're helping your brain function, and you're helping your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. I want you to save money. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. If you follow what I take, and everything I'm talking about, I'm taking daily. If you do this, you're going to slow down the aging process, and you're going to have a better immune system. And you won't be a crazy liberal. Because crazy liberals, they have brain dysfunction. All right, let's listen into live now.
Know that we did receive word from the White House coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. We expect now that we are going to hear from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, joined by Vice President J.D. Vance. That's all the information we have so far on that, but that just coming into our newsroom, so be sure to watch that here in full. Commercial free, expected to begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now, I do want to take this image for you in full. As you can see, we do have several different live cameras that are showing the situation as it is unfolding over in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're going to make sure to keep some of these images on your screen, and if we see things pick up again, we'll take you out there live. For now, I do want to head right back over to Washington, D.C., as we're hearing from Representative Hakeem Jeffries, as well as Senator Chuck Schumer.
At 11 o'clock, we have the War Powers Act.
Speaking of that, what is your expectation regarding the vote? And if it does not get a simple majority, what is your expectation or plan for oversight of military action?
Well, first, we were 2 votes short last time, and there are Republicans. Republicans should step up to the plate. Many of them privately in their conversations know how disastrous this is. Made even worse last night when Trump admitted this will take years. He doesn't even know how long. This kind of military adventurism, this kind of...
Worry about the illegal aliens, Chuck Schumer. who doesn't know how to make a hamburger. All right, let's listen into CNBC. Tom Friedman is being asked some questions about the Venezuelan oil plan.
If you're an admin business partner or an EA and you're not using the bar to book business travel, you need to switch. Hi, I'm Tina, and I'm an admin business partner.
Right now, we want to get into the situation in Venezuela. New York Times opinion columnist Tom Friedman's latest piece is titled, "If Trump doesn't bring democracy into Venezuela, he will never get much oil out." Tom Friedman himself joins us right now. And Tom, it is great to see you. We've been talking about this situation since it first evolved all week. Your take is
now just remember,
no way.
Just remember, Tom Friedman got it totally wrong when it came to the operations of Israel against Gaza and against Hezbollah. All right? Totally, got it totally wrong. Totally wrong. So let's see what Tom Friedman has to say, because he's such a intellectual. See, he's part of the paper pushing belt. You know, these pseudo intellectuals, they don't know how to do anything, but they know how to push paper. He's one of them.
Believe the previous administration and setup that is there and think that this is going to work. Why don't you lay out your views on this?
Well, first of all, Becky, thank you for sharing the story of your daughter. I didn't know that, and it was enormously powerful. And I'm wishing her great success as a science. Well, you know, the situation basically is we removed Maduro, the president of Venezuela, the leader of basically a mafia regime, but we left the mafia regime in place. And now President Trump is basically saying we are taking over Venezuela's oil exports.
So now you have to pay attention to what I've been saying for quite a while here. All right, people that are 40 years of age or older, especially if you're older, 30% of them within the next 5 years, maybe even the next 4 years, you're going to start seeing different levels of dementia. Now, there's minor and then there's major, but they'll fall into 3 different categories, major categories. Out of the 30% of the ones that are 40 years or older, 30% will have either ischemic problems, where they have microbleeding or microclotting causing neural death. Amyloidosis, 24.9% of the 30% will have amyloidosis similar to plaque buildup that's like Alzheimer's, Lewy body, or some other type of misfolding of proteins and not being able to clear it. And less than 0.1% will have prion disease. All right? Now, the reason why this is happening is because of inflammation and because of the enzymes that aren't working properly to be able to break apart misfolded proteins. So if there's high beta sheets with a protein, they start to stack and they start to build up plaque. So it's a combination. If you bring down the inflammation, you bring down the free radicals, you're reducing the probability of having this problem. All right. So it's really important to pay attention to me. I've been saying this every day for over 5 years. You have to bring down the inflammation. All right. If you don't, you're going to have a problem. Okay. Now, you are seeing with Tom Friedman the beginnings of dementia. All right. Just listen to the way he does his sentence structure. Now, he writes a lot. He reads a lot. All right. And he's having problems speaking. Watch the It's not it's not as prevalent compared to Rick Davis on Bloomberg, who is much younger than Thomas Friedman. But Thomas Friedman has written a lot. So there's neural connections that he's developed for many decades with all the reading and writing that he's generated throughout his career. Listen very carefully on how he's doing his sentence structure. He's got the early signs of the dementia. And then if you look, his eyes, sometimes when people are starting to have their dementia, they're starting to lose out, there's a little bit, something's lost in their eyes. There's like, there's a little bit of their soul has gone away. You can see that in his eyes. Listen.
Sure. And you'll be meeting with the major oil companies, American oil companies, tomorrow at the White House to get them to go in and begin exporting, rebuilding the infrastructure of Venezuela's oil sector and then exporting their oil. And the point I'm trying to make is that
he's got it. He's got the early signs.
You're Exxon or Conoco or Chevron. Chevron's in Venezuela still in a limited way. Conoco and Exxon were their properties were expropriated. For them to go back, you need a legal structure. They need a new hydrocarbon law. They need assurances of any disputes.
And when it comes to the neural networks, you have let's say two. In a simplistic model, you have two neurons, right? And you have lots of dendritic connections that are coming off those two neurons, and they can attach. Right now, just imagine billions of neurons having different attachments, where they can have multiple attachments to one neuron and have multiple attachments to surrounding neurons. And it creates a neural network. And through the emergent property of that, that's what allows us to have memory and to think, to be able to move and all this stuff, right? So when you start having neural death, especially due to inflammation and poor blood flow, what will happen is the dendritic connections will start to recede. So there's a little bit of overlap. So you may think a little bit slower, maybe the memory isn't as clear. Neural death and this neural decline is not linear. It's nonlinear, meaning that it's slow at the beginning, usually. It's slow unless you have like a major stroke, but it's slow at the beginning, and then it rapidly increases the neural death. So it's the dendritic connections start to recede, so it's slow, then they're not communicating, and then there's neural death and more neural death, and it's exponential. In time in the x-axis, a number of neurons that are dying in the y-axis. So it's early on, it's just, and then it starts to move upward, all right? And this is what you're seeing here. He's already has it. He has it. Now, this is rampant with people that have boosted 4, 5, 6 times. This is also a problem with people that have contracted multiple times. And it's that inflammation. You got to keep the inflammation down. Because if you have high inflammation at the neuron level, inside the neuron and around the neuron, you're increasing the chances of your enzymes to not function properly. And if they're not functioning properly, especially the enzymes that help to clear misfolded proteins, you start having plaque buildup. Or if you have this inflammation that is chronic at the cerebral level, you'll have neural death. If you have this inflammation chronically, guess what? You have more misfolded proteins. This is what's happening. I said this 5 years ago, this was going to happen. You know, this is another aspect to it. You can see it in his eyes. There's something, if you look at the eyes, there's something lost in there.
They need security. They need a rule of law. And the notion that we can decapitate this regime, leave the incredibly corrupt system that Maduro led behind with all the same people, and then say to our oil companies, hey, please come in and start pumping oil. I think that's an illusion. Our oil companies need a legal structure in order to operate there.
I think that's a very fair point. And
If you don't want to end up like Thomas Friedman, then you better go to my store and start taking the antioxidants and the different supplements that I offer that brings down inflammation. Because you're going to end up like him. I guarantee you, you're going to end up like him if you don't do what I'm telling you to do.
I think it'd be difficult to convince them that that structure, first of all, is going to take place really quickly. Second of all, the idea that it would last past this administration or something beyond that, we're asking them to spend billions and billions, probably $10 billion a year to try and put the infrastructure back up. How could you possibly make some of those promises and make sure that they are lasting ones? Because you would need to be there for years in order to get that money back.
If you talk to the companies, Becky, they'll tell you, I mean, if they started tomorrow, it would probably take them 3 years to repair everything that's been destroyed in terms of Venezuela's economic infrastructure and then get it going. They could probably do about 500,000 barrels a day with low-hanging fruit, you know, in a reasonable amount of time. But to really get it up to the capacity, it would take 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. That's the end of Trump's term. They would begin really exporting oil right when this administration would change. When you look at the whipsaw nature of our regimes when it comes to our governments, when it comes to energy, these oil companies, I think, are going to be very, very wary.
There has been, though, Tom, real investor interest. We've spoken with other investors this week who are raising funds right now. They're not the majors, but some of them used to work for the majors, and they think that they can get a couple of $1 billion raised very quickly. And I guess that's the question. If we do have a plan to go in and rebuild the infrastructure in Venezuela, try and help the Venezuelan people with this as well, where does the money come from first?
Yeah, I mean, a couple $1 billion, that's probably about $98 billion less than the estimate of what would be needed. So please tell the people raising those monies I'm not interested in their prospectus. You know, I really think that the problem we're going to run into here is that we decapitated this regime, a terrible leader, but the leader of a terrible regime. We have now basically brought him to trial in New York. But we've decided, the Trump administration decided, to leave that terrible regime in place and not move to say to that regime, okay, we've gotten rid of your leader, we need a transition here, you have 6 months, 9 months to organize free and fair elections. But that is a political context, I think, that would really be attractive to investors and give Venezuela a long-term path, you know, to restoration of its democracy.
Well, that was implied, wasn't it, Tom, that that's the way you would do it, that the military wouldn't back Mercado. So they said, in the meantime, in lieu of an election, which we want in a year, I thought that was part of what the administration was pushing for at this point, because it would have been, the military is behind, for good or bad. The opposition party wouldn't have the support of the military. Then we'd be right back in the same place if there was a, what's it called? Is it a junta or something, Tom? You're well versed in all that stuff.
You know, Joe, you're raising an important.
Tiger Woods built his career on forward thinking, staying ahead of the curve and away from the expected.
You know, Joe, you're raising an important point. I have not heard the president say that at all. That I've not heard him use the word elections at all. In terms of
he's going to have major decline in 3 years.
And this really gets to
major decline.
I saw this story unfold in Libya. I wrote about it last week when the President Obama and NATO, our NATO allies, decided to decapitate Gaddafi, but not put boots on the ground. And what happened basically was nature took its course there, and the country basically fell apart into civil war, and is still basically in a tribalized situation there. And so I think that's the danger in these kinds of situations where when you decapitate one of these regimes, but you don't put in place an alternative structure on the ground, you try to remote control it from afar, I think it's going to be really, really challenging.
Tom, politically, the idea that we may ultimately have to subsidize these oil companies to even go in there, and what kind of game of chicken might go on between some of these oil companies that are, even contemplating it and what they may ask for. How do you think that plays back here in the U.S.? Because at some level, there's this unique paradox, which is if you're trying to lower the price of oil, which could be great for consumers to some degree, but by doing that, you could actually put some of these shale producers out of business at the same time.
Well, the Wall Street Journal today has a lead story that Trump wants to bring the price of oil down to $50 a barrel. For our majors, that's very problematic, and for the shale drillers number, I mean, that's really close to break even for them. So Trump's political interest, which I think is to get the price of gasoline at the pump as low as possible for the midterms, is going to run up against the economic interests of the oil companies. And at the same time, they have a lot of opportunities around the world. These are also, they've got to report to their shareholders. And so if Trump says, well, let's say we're going to give you subsidies to go in, I mean, the amount of subsidies would have to be huge. And let's remember, ExxonMobil says it's owed $20 billion by Venezuela for the expropriation of its assets back in 2007. ConocoPhillips says it's owed $12 billion. So before they even go in those debts, there's got to be a process at least in place for eliminating those debts. So my simple point is in the long run, and we're only less than a week into this, is that ultimately, if you want to exploit, see Venezuela, it's their oil, exploit their oil in a way that will be helpful to them and the world market, I think you need to move down the road toward free and fair elections. Let's remember the opposition won the last election by estimates by 70% of the vote. Joe is right. The people with the guns right now are not those people. And that's why this is going to be very complicated. Changing a country of 28 million people by remote control and just focusing on oil. I saw that play in Libya. It ended really bad.
Your perfect domain is out there. Go to Wix and
Thomas Friedman has some problems with his cognitive function. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic and the multivitamin. The multivitamin is easy to digest, and it will help with the enzymatic activity for your cells so they perform properly. It's part of the foundation of the anti-aging protocol. In addition, get the probiotic. This is going to help with your gut biome, allow you to absorb your nutrients properly, improve your cellular metabolism, improve your skin, improve your immune system, bring down inflammation at the gut level, and improve your brain function. A lot of people don't realize good brain function starts at the gut. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. Stack it with the multivitamin. And this multivitamin is easy to digest, and it's everything you need as a foundation to slow down the aging process. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. Brings down inflammation and helps for you to control your lipid profile. That will help with your cardiovascular health and boost up your immune system. Talking about immune system, get the cleanse or the max 35 or the max 14. They're at different price points, but you take them the same way. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or 30 seconds, then swallow it. What this will do is neutralize and improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. This is super important to boost up your innate immune system. And when your immune system is better, you don't get sick as often. It's that simple. Now, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. And then go back to your maintenance dose once everything is better. I've been doing this protocol for more than 5 years, every day. It's the first pillar on top of that foundation. So the foundation is the probiotic and the multivitamin. And then the first pillar, max 35, max 14 or cleanse to boost up the immune system. Second pillar, C60, soak up the free radicals. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and to help your cardiovascular system and brain function. Remember what I said, bringing down inflammation is going to help your brain. And the fourth pillar, boomer boost to rev up your metabolism and your energy levels. But you get other benefits too, like brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I am the most comprehensive in terms of creating a protocol that will help to slow down the aging process that's affordable. My process is better than Brian Johnson's. Mr. Tech Bro that's spending $2 million a year trying because he's afraid to die. All right? Most people can't spend $2 million to slow down the aging process. If you follow what I'm doing, you're going to be able to slow down the aging process, get healthy, and boost up that immune system. And you don't need to be a tech bro, and you don't need $2 million. My process works, and it's way better than Brian Johnson's. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual-purpose deodorants. This is for males or females. It is made from essential oils from the Himalayas, has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's all natural, and you use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. And when you're detoxifying your body, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. And when they are functioning better, when your immune system and endocrine system's functioning better, guess what? You're healthier, and you have more vitality. You can get it in citrus, and you can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Get a couple bars for your household. Alrighty. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg.
Investment look like in the U.S.
More tariff talk coming out of this administration.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe. The president wants lower interest rates. He wants a rate cut cycle.
How do you broaden out the AI play?
Are people just looking for something to worry about when it comes to China? Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
All right, folks, second hour of Bloomberg Intelligence starts right now. George Ferguson, Bloomberg Intelligence, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst. He's going to talk to us here about what's happening in the world of defense spending. President Trump wants to take the number up big time. So what does that mean for the defense contractors? Jeffrey Langbaum, Bloomberg Intelligence, Senior U.S. REIT Analyst, will give us his thoughts about President Trump taking aim at institutional ownership of housing. I didn't know it was a thing, but it is, and President Trump is certainly interested in that. We're also going to play back an interview we had earlier this morning with Stephen Meyer.
How could he not know that there were institutions buying homes? Blackstone's doing it. I mean, how could he not know this? He's from Bloomberg.
Paul Sweeney, this is the Bloomberg Intelligence Program. Let's kick it off with John Tucker and Bloomberg Business Watch.
All right, guys, thanks very much. Dialing back some of the risk right now, as you mentioned, shares of companies of like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, soaring after the president signaled plans to raise military spending to $1.5 trillion in 2027. Of course, that would need approval. And then you'd have the housing-related companies. They were under pressure after the president also said he'd look to ban institutional investors from buying single-family homes. As far as the data, weekly jobless claims rising less than expected in the weekend of January 3rd. And then you had private payrolls data. That was earlier in the week. That pointed to a sluggish labor market into this year. So kind of mixed signals on that front. Investors, of course, awaiting tomorrow's all-important payrolls number. And then you have Seema Shah, principal global investor, saying the performance of stocks this year is going to depend a lot on bond yields.
When we're looking at the equity market, we feel pretty positive about the macro backdrop and earnings. The one caveat to this, though, is that bond yields have to stay fairly well behaved.
And right now, the S&P 500 up just 3.6923 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 242 points. That's up about 0.5% right now. And the Nasdaq 100, that is lower, down 155 points. That's a decline of about 0.6% right now. Restaurants are starting to take a second look at all that food waste. You know, more than 1 billion tons of food. This is the statistics, at least from the United Nations. A billion tons of food get tossed out around the world each year, with venues like restaurants that contributes to about 30% of the total. Now you have companies like Winnow Solutions helping restaurants track and reduce waste. Then you have Chef Telly Justice and her team at Hags in New York, the East Village, They're aiming to create a zero waste menu. So they're going to use ingredients that might otherwise get tossed out, like mushroom powder made from stems and trimmings and stuff like that. I don't know.
I was out at a local pub last night with my girlfriend. We split our meal. Perfect portion. I'm just not eating that much anymore.
Yeah, well, you know.
We're getting older, too.
Look at him. He looks great, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul.
All right, John Tucker. Thank
What
you
happened
so
to
much.
Scarlett?
She's out taping her TV segment with these industry guys. She's multimedia, radio, TV.
Does it all.
She does it all. All right, so let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweeney, and we're joined by Bloomberg's Isabel Lee. Isabel, what are you looking at?
Let's start with Coinbase, ticker COIN. Shares are up around 0.6% after Bank of America raised the stock to buy from neutral. So the bank said that it's optimistic on the growth prospects of Coinbase, especially when it comes to new products and lower valuation. So they see opportunities with Coinbase's tokenization product and see the company as a partner for TradFi firms. TradFi is traditional finance. So tokenization. What is tokenization? Basically, think of it as when you convert assets like stocks, bonds, private loans into blockchain-based tokens, and you can have it in fractional ownership and all of that. And a lot of Wall Street banks are actually pushing into tokenization. It's a new big thing. Coinbase is piling into it, the likes of Franklin Templeton, Janus, so everyone is piling into it. But the stock is up now 0.6%. Investors are cheering that probably.
Very good. All right, how about Nike?
Nike shares are higher by nearly 2%, and this comes even after Needham downgraded the footwear maker to hold. Needham said that a turnaround is longer than expected, and Nike's aggressive sell-in to the North American channel is a strategic misstep. So we know that Nike has been really struggling, especially in the past year with challenges in China and the Converse brand appearing to struggle. But I don't know why shares are up by 2%.
Well, as I understand it, they need to get their inventories down. Their inventories built up.
There is that, yeah.
So they did. But Poonam Goyal said, and we'll talk to Poonam in a few moments, she said they're doing really well in the U.S. on that front, but need more work to do in China, I guess.
That is fair. And then Nike still has 27 buys, 13 holds, 2 sells. So overall, investors are still optimistic.
Soho House. What is Soho House? I feel like it's a New York thing, but I don't know.
It's actually a global thing, because when my husband was based in Hong Kong, he was already talking about this. This is a members-only club, typically for creatives. Exactly. I'm not cool enough to be part of this club too, but it's not having a good day. Shares are down by more than 15%. They're facing a funding gap tied to the company's pending sale. So MCR Hospitality and QP said it can't fund the $200 million equity commitment in full by the closing date. So Soho House Committee is looking for alternative sources. So a group of investors, for context, led by several boutique New York hotels, agreed to take Soho House private in a $2.7 billion deal. And Soho House has been struggling since its IPO. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there are underlying reasons, but it feels like the in thing these days in New York is joining a club, because you can't get restaurant reservations anymore, especially the ones Taylor Swift goes to. So now clubs are the thing. I am not a member of any club, but
full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Maybe Paul, we can visit one day.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Good stuff there. Isabel Lee giving us the latest there in the movers there in the marketplace. For more conversations like this, subscribe to our Stock Movers Report. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen here. I'm not sure if the last 24, 48 hours has been a good time for the defense contractors or a bad time. On one hand, you got President Trump saying he wants to ramp up defense spending big time. On the other hand, he says, we want you to do better, do faster, stop paying out dividends and buybacks. I don't know what's going on there. So George Ferguson, it's his job to know what's going on. He's a senior aerospace, defense, and airlines analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. George, what 24 or 48 hours it's been for the defense contractors? My head is spinning. What's your take?
So my take is that $1.5 trillion sounds like a great defense budget. It sounds like, if you're a defense contractor, it'll be hard to execute on that, right? That's basically increasing their budget by 50%. So I'm not sure how much they'll really be able to benefit from that big increase. We still got to see Congress also approve something like that too. So I don't get too excited yet about that $1.5 trillion number. Like a lot of things in Washington, the bear will be in the details. Let's see what they bring forward. I'm a little more concerned about the buyback, dividend limit on compensation restrictions, or at least it pushed to limit, right? Because, we're kind of looking at this, overnight, thinking about this a bit, right? So, these are defense stocks, right? Defense stocks are not, you don't wake up in the morning and find out some defense company has the killer, I don't know, killer app, killer device, and all of a sudden everybody's got to own it. Revenues are rising by 70%. It's a huge profit maker. Profits are just ballooning out, and the stocks are rising. These are sort of slow, methodical growing companies. They help the country build some of the equipment we need to defend ourselves. They get margins, 10, 11, 12. That's a good margin. It's not, for the rest of the industry, the rest of industrials, that's not super great. And so you support your stock through dividends and share buybacks as you need them, right? And so there's a class of investor in here looking for that dividend. I think it's a fair return for them, meaning it's fair for them to look for that as a shareholder. So I think that if they can't have that dividend, they're going to have to go find some other shareholders. I'm a little concerned about how they do that, to be honest with you, how they manage that change.
How much, we know that President Trump signed
The bottom line is that we need to start ramping up our military, and we need our defense contractors to stop buybacks for shares and passing on the dividend and create more manufacturing in the United States to be able to have the war effort against China. That's the issue. Why can't a Bloomberg guy say that? No, we're really worried about the dividend. You won't have a dividend. You won't even have a stock market if China wins the war.
The Defense Department could hold back contracts as a way to try to influence the defense company, but I don't think it's quite as easy as that, right? Like you're not gonna pull the Joint Strike Fighter out of Lockheed and put it somewhere else, right? You can't. It'd take you a decade to do that, I think, or at least half a decade. Trump will be out of office by then. Raytheon makes really great radars, air defense systems. That's one of their core competencies. You're not going to pull it out of there, right away. And so, to me, I think that sort of the contract leverage is challenging for sure. I think they could make it a bit more painful than the executive teams would like. And one of the other things we keep thinking about too is Raytheon is part of a bigger company called RTX. 2/3 of that company is commercial, right? So if you're RTX management, maybe you'd want to separate, right? Because all of a sudden you can't feed your shareholders on the commercial side the way the same as you could feed them on the defense side. Maybe you'd say, okay, why don't we pull Raytheon out of here? I don't think the federal government wants that either, right? Because there's synergies inside an RTX where they make jet engines for the Joint Strike Fighter. They make jet engines for the commercial aircraft fleet, the global commercial aircraft fleet. You want those synergies inside the company. So I'm not sure how this fully plays out. My guess is that right now you don't need a lot of support from a buyback perspective because defense stocks are generally hot, right? So a lot of them I've seen sort of wind down some of those buybacks. The dividend's a different story. Maybe they go in and try to discuss with the administration a bit about how they keep the dividend. And the CEOs have to worry about how to fix the $5 million cap on their pay.
Right. All right, George, really interesting here. I'm looking at all the defense stocks that are trading up today, 5, 6, 7% after trading down yesterday. Lockheed Martin, for its part, hit a 52-week high today, intraday. George Ferguson, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence. Let's switch gears to the real estate business, because that's also in the crosshairs of President Trump, calling out some issues more, basically saying Trump targets institutional purchases of single-family homes. We want to bring in Jeff Langbaum, who covers all the REITs for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. Jeff, what's the president targeting here, and is it really an issue in the residential real estate market?
Well, thanks for having me on. It really isn't. It's one of those things that's been a target for politicians for some time because it's a very easy political message to sell. You're going after the big institutions that are crowding out the individual home buyers, making prices too expensive. But at the end of the day, these are well-run institutional landlords of rental homes, not unlike apartment homes. And I think that at the end of the day, if what he is suggesting he wants to do gets done in some capacity, the net result probably winds up being less home inventory, which probably ends up offsetting any positive impact on pricing that he would be looking to accomplish.
Well, I don't know much about this business, but how big is institutional ownership of residential real estate in the US?
It's big.
It's tiny.
It's
I've seen the numbers. It's only a couple % of the overall housing stock.
Well,
maybe a little bit more of the overall rental housing stock. But at the end of the day, it's a majority of what is owned.
What Blackstone did in suburbs, they jacked up the price because they were buying at a premium. So what has now happened is that the home prices have been elevated. So if you're a home buyer, it's harder to buy a home because Blackstone bought up the inventory. All right. Now, if you're looking at total number of homes, yeah, it's a small percentage, but it should be viewed as what is the percentage that is being what is the percentage of ownership? What is the number of homes owned by Blackstone and companies like it versus the amount of homes that are on the market? All right. That's I think an important ratio to understand. Now, what Blackstone did was it bought at a premium, thinking that they would be able to rent them out and then there would be asset appreciation. They found out that with the insurance and maintenance and all this stuff, that they were losing money and they were starting to sell. So in certain markets, it's actually bringing down the price of homes. So they jacked up the price of homes because they were buying at a premium, and now they're trying to sell off their inventory. So if you were a buyer at this moment in time where they were buying these at a premium, it was harder for you to purchase because the prices were elevated. If you were a seller, you loved it. Okay, now with where we're at right now, we have home prices elevated because you have private equity that owns certain percentage of the inventory within a subdivision. And until they start selling off, it's not going to equalize. Now, as they are selling off because they're losing money, Blackstone's losing money on doing this. So what they're doing now is that as they're selling it off, home prices are starting to go down. So if you're a buyer, this is a good time because prices aren't increasing as fast in some regions, and in other regions it's actually going down. So it's a good time to buy. If you're a seller of a property in these areas, then it's a problem because now you're starting to see your asset value has gone down. They should have never been able to buy these homes.
More construction and the demand has followed, and so it typically supply and demand work on their own, and the government stays out of it, the federal government stays out of it, and so at the end of the day, I'm not really
private
sure
equity screws stuff up.
Able to be done here. It feels like banning specific owners of properties from playing in a private market transaction is interesting. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, but here's the problem: when you have just a few consortium, just a few private equity companies buying large chunks of available housing stock, housing inventory, not the total inventory, not the total number of homes, but what is available for sale, and they are chipping away at that ownership, right? They're gaining, they're accreting. And there's only a few of them, maybe 5 major ones, all right? They're bidding up the price. And then all of a sudden it's creating a systemic risk because they think that they can figure out a way to make money on all these different homes. But they realize that once there's a downturn in the economy and people stop paying their rent, they start having a problem. plus the insurance is going up. So they're starting to realize, well, wait a minute, we can't make money on this portfolio. In some cases, and some units were making money and others were losing money, and therefore it's offsetting. So this whole thing that they did created a situation where there's risk, there's rental risk within these 5 major companies that are doing this. Versus just, one family buying a home and another family selling the home. So no, when you have a monopoly that's buying into the rental market or buying into the housing market, you're building up risk. The risk is being concentrated in those 5 companies versus the risk being spread out amongst a multitude of individuals or individual families. No, but Bloomberg won't say that because, not enough thinking. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This will help to bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. By detoxifying your body regularly, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function. Amazing how that works. All right? Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. It's that simple. Do that every day, and you'll improve your health. Another way to improve your health is to build muscle. You can do that by taking the gladiator barley and doing some resistance training. In addition, this will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and detoxify your body. When you're bringing down inflammation, detoxifying your body, and soaking up free radicals, your immune system, your endocrine system, your vascular system, and brain function are better. You slow down the aging process, and you recover quicker after a workout. Just doing a little bit of resistance training and taking gladiator barley, and this is going to help you to build muscle, to slow down the aging process. And when you build muscle, guess what? You're also controlling your A1C levels. When you're 40 years of age or older, guess what? You can't build muscle as easily. Get the Myotrol. This is polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and to help the health of your mitochondria so you have the energy to build muscle. Now, this helps with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training. Now, if you stack this together, they're synergistic. This helps with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. Gladiator barley has the nutrients, the micronutrients to build muscle. You can take them separately, but you get an added benefit if you take them together. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit with your sport if you take the gladiator barley and the Myotrol. But you can stack this to slow down the aging process. And part of the aging process is atrophy. And I just gave you the recipe on how to stop it. All right.
Have some investors turning to gold for stability. To get a free gold and silver information guide and learn how to add metals to your IRA or 401k tax and penalty free, go to goldencrestmetals.com/guide. That's goldencrestmetals.com/guide. 10 of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 higher, but still the index is lower. Consumer staples in the lead, that's home to shares of ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, up 4%. Its price target raised to $57 a share, Bank of America. Now, you have information technology, the only major sector in the red, but since that has a huge weighting in the index, the overall stock index is lower. The S&P 500 right now down 2 points, 69.19. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 231 points. And you have the NASDAQ 100 down 171 points. Sandisk is the worst performing stock in the S&P 500, at least down over 11%. Then you have the defense stocks, the best performing individual stocks in the S&P 500. For instance, Huntington Ingalls, those shares were up just over 7%. And e-commerce mogul Mark Lohr's wonder trying to do to takeout food, Paul, what Amazon did to shopping. Okay. This is a $2 billion experiment. They're trying to transform restaurants with robots and and artificial intelligence. But you can ask the question: do you want your food made in a culinary fulfillment center? So
there you go.
But worth exploring, I suppose. We check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Scarlett's back.
I'm back. I just had to run away briefly.
There we go. We're all set.
But we're back.
Teams back together. All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Scarlett Phil, Paul Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Well, today, during an interview with Bloomberg's Jonathan Ferro, Lisa Bromwitz, and Anne-Marie Hordern, Fed Governor Steve Myron said he's looking for 150 basis points of interest rate cuts this year to boost the labor market. Describing monetary policy as restrictive, Myron said underlying inflation is likely running at 2.3%, which means Fed officials have room to cut further. Here's a portion of that conversation.
I'm unsurprisingly the lowest dot. I'm looking for about 1.5 points of cuts. A lot of that is driven by my view of inflation. I gave a speech about this about a month ago in December at Columbia University. My view is that almost all of the excess inflation over target is due to quirks of how we calculate inflation. So as you have talked about with many of your guests many times before, shelter inflation really, really lags a lot. And because average tenant rents have caught up to new tenant rents, because market rents have been running at a 1% rate for a couple of years now, I think it's appropriate to sort of think about underlying inflation as abstracting from that a little bit. The shelter inflation is indicative of a supply-demand imbalance from 2022 to 2023, not 2027. We need to be making policy for 2027 because policy lags. And their side of it is the portfolio management fees that I'm sure you've talked about again with many of your guests many times. Stock market went up, mechanically inflation moves higher, despite many of your other guests, I'm sure, no doubt, telling you about fee compression in the asset management industry for decades. So you extract from those two things, underlying inflation is running at 2.3%. That's with the noise of our target.
That sounds like an argument for neutral. You're making an argument, though, for this year, for accommodation. Where does that come from? Why are you looking for accommodative monetary policy stance coming out of Washington?
Yes, so a couple things. First of all, as I just said, underlying inflation is running within noise of our target, and that's a good indication of where overall inflation is going to be going in the medium term. But then the unemployment rate is 4.6%, right? So that means that there's about 1 million Americans who don't have jobs, who could have jobs without causing unwanted inflation, without causing unwanted upward pressure on inflation. I don't think it's right to tell those people that they shouldn't have jobs because we're just mechanically calculating inflation in some silly way. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing is that because we kept policy tighter than I think it ought to be, that makes me mark down our growth forecast for the future relative to where it should be. And so if we hadn't been keeping policy, in my view, too tight over the last year or so, it wouldn't be necessary to provide that type of.
Just quickly, you say mark down in the future because the Fed actually marked up GDP for 26. Where do you mean in the future?
No, so like when you look at these dots, right, in the set, they're projections of appropriate policy and projections of economic fundamentals like growth and inflation, conditional upon appropriate policy. So my projections for growth and inflation are conditional upon getting my policy forecast.
All right, that's Fed Governor Stephen Myron speaking with Bloomberg's Jonathan Ferro, Lisa Bromwitz, and Anne-Marie Hordern. He thinks rates need to come down now and by more than the market's discounting. Stuart Paul joins us here, U.S. economist, Bloomberg Economics. Stuart, do you agree with him about rates need to come down faster and by more than the market's discounting?
I mean, right now the market is pricing in a little bit over 50 basis points of cuts. I think that there is room to come down more than that, but 150 basis points of cuts is exactly laughable. I mean, it's
only going to be 50
recognize
basis
this idea
points.
that monetary policy is not especially restrictive right now. Yes, the labor market is cooled. Yes, the pace of labor income growth has slowed. But if you look at spreads, if you look at bankruptcies, if you look at credit conditions broadly, if you look at valuations, if you look at credit card discharges and auto loan discharges and delinquencies, it does not scream that policy is restrictive right now. And I think that that's what the rest of the committee is going to be looking at. The rest of the committee is going to think, at least for now.
How valuable is someone like Stephen Myron when he comes on Bloomberg Television, when he speaks to media outlets about making the case for lower interest rates? We know that he is advocating for what President Trump is pushing for, rate cuts. But do his economic explanations each time make sense? Do they back up what he wants?
I think that it's helpful to hear what policymakers are thinking about. And because he is one of the voices at the table when the FOMC meets, it is nice to hear that he's really focused on shelter inflation. He thinks that shelter inflation is overstated. We can understand the argument that he's putting forward. I think that he is missing the forest for the trees, though. By focusing so much on shelter inflation, he's missing this larger idea that inflation, generally, is still running above the Fed's 2% target by a lot. Core goods inflation, core goods prices have been rising, and core goods typically are dragging on inflation under normal circumstances. Today, during his interview on surveillance, he did not have a good explanation for why core goods prices were rising. And when that's the case, the economic assumption is going to be because demand is exceeding supply and money is chasing those goods. And when that's the case, the Fed can't afford to lean against demand just a little bit. But again, credit conditions aren't that tight. The Fed is not leaning very much against demand. And so when we hear his explanations, we know what the conversation is around the table, and we know where other folks might face a little bit of pushback in their attempt to keep policy rates where they are.
Programming idea here. Next time Myron's on our airwaves, we'll get Stuart Paul in there on this little roundtable.
I like
See
that
the
idea.
economists go back and forth. How compelling would that be? Talking about marginal revenue.
This is Bloomberg. This is super compelling stuff.
That's what we do. Non-farm payrolls tomorrow. 70,000 is the number. It's not 100,000. It's not 200,000. 70,000. What's a number like this tell you about the labor market?
It's interesting because I do think that we're going to see actually a little bit over 70,000. 70,000 is consensus. I think that we're going to see closer to 80,000. That's
the whisper numbers, about 60-ish.
Right. The whisper number is about 60.
Stuart Paul going out of consensus.
I'm out of consensus. I'm a little bit higher. Whether you're looking at the whisper number, whether you're looking at the consensus economist forecast, whether you're looking at our own Bloomberg economics research, the pace of hiring is expected to be about 2.5 times or 2 times the pace needed to keep the unemployment rate steady. So that's what's driving the expectation that the unemployment rate is going to tick down to 4.5% tomorrow from 4.6% in the prior report. I actually think that the unemployment rate is going to hold steady at 4.6% despite having a relatively optimistic forecast for payrolls. And that's because we do see a lot of folks entering the labor force and re-entering the labor force, folks at the lower end of the income distribution, folks who may have been on welfare programs or other transfer programs who are now dealing with more onerous work requirements to qualify for those programs. And so I think that we're still going to see a relatively elevated unemployment rate of 4.6% despite hiring at 80,000, which would otherwise be a pretty good growth.
What do you think is, I mean, how trustworthy, how credible is the jobs numbers for tomorrow that's coming out? I mean, it was for the month of December, and I know the shutdown had ended by then, but it feels like it's not going to be the clean read that people want and need.
It's going to be at least higher quality than what we got in the previous report for November. Okay, I think that's the place to start. Quality is moving at least in the right direction. But I think one thing to remember is that indexing too much on any given number, whether it's the non-farm payrolls report or whether it's the ADP report, focusing too much on one number is going to leave you wanting for understanding about the broader economy. And we've had issues with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and their estimates of non-farm payrolls going back to their birth-death model and their estimate of how many people are hired because of new company formation. And that's been going on for years. And I think that when we look at the totality of labor market data, one thing is very clear, which is that the labor market has cooled considerably. It is not contributing remotely to inflation. But when the rest of the economy is well insulated from monetary policy and rates aren't proving restrictive on credit conditions, it's very difficult to find a rationale for swift rate cuts in the near term.
All right. You're sitting on a chairlift this weekend and in the rain, by the way, at Wyndham. Your chairlift mate says, "Hey, Stuart, how's the economy?" How do you answer that?
Wait, hold on. Wyndham is full of certain kinds of skier too, right?
Is it?
Yes, because it's a private ski mountain now.
Is it?
It's about half private now.
I didn't know that very
Yeah,
well.
so that's a certain kind of skier you're talking to.
So this is a very plausible question, and I'm going to get on the chairlift. So somebody asked me, how's the economy doing? My answer is just more thematic. The absorption of workers in the economy has slowed dramatically for structural reasons, not cyclical reasons. Right. And when the economy is, when workers are feeling the brunt of slowing hiring for structural reasons, there's very little that the Fed can do to address it. Right. And when that's the case, there's not going to be a rush to cut rates anytime soon. A lot of the structural transformation that we're seeing is good. We're seeing booming productivity. We're seeing hot GDP through the third quarter. When we look at the trade balance numbers from this morning, it looks like fourth quarter growth estimates are going to have to be revised up. And so it's very difficult to find a lot of real cyclical weakness right now.
When you say structural reasons, how much of that is AI?
A lot of it is AI. I'm not yet willing to say that it's utilization of AI, but a lot of it is the AI complex. It's investment in AI technologies. It's new development of some software that's going to be deployed. It's not yet clear to me. It's not yet clear to me that we're experiencing the full impact. People writing legal briefs faster, or doing analysis faster, or digging ditches, or turning wrenches any faster. But the AI complex is undoubtedly adding to growth, and is undoubtedly adding to our productivity numbers.
Pretty good.
That's a great answer.
My answer is standing at the bar at the Squad Tavern. Economy's good. GDP's growing, inflation's okay.
That's why you're not an economist.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good, probably another beer. Stuart Paul, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Stuart Paul, he's a U.S. economist. Bloomberg Economics joining us here in the studio. It's going to get rained on this weekend up at Windham Mountain. That's too bad because snow conditions are tough around here. Looking at the S&P, -4. But the Dow's up 290. I'll let John Tucker explain why. The NASDAQ is down 168 points, so not much direction on the index level here. Yields ticking up just a little bit higher, up a couple basis points, 4.17% on your 10-year. Brent crude oil up $1.20, $61 a barrel for Brent crude. A little bit of a rebound today. This is
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your nails, your hair, your musculature, your bone density, also your joints and your cartilage. Very high quality. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Now, you can take separately or you can take it with the collagen, but the collagen is a new product that I have. And this will help to remodel the joints. Now, it'll work a multitude of ways. It's going to help with rebuilding the joint with type 2 collagen and ACAN. ACAN helps with the cushioning of the joint. So it's helping to remodel. It also brings down, collagen brings down the inflammation. So it's reducing the destruction of the joint, because chronic inflammation at the joint will destroy the cartilage and also cause osteoarthritis. So if you reduce that inflammation, you're helping with the joint health. And this will also help to open up certain pathways to allow for nutrients to come in, like glucosamine and chondroitin, to help with building up the joint. So this is very important if you're older and you have problems with your joint and you want to alleviate and remodel the joint. It works even better when you stack it together with the collagen, but you can take them separately. This is really important in terms of really getting to the root cause of the inflammation and allowing for type 2 collagen and ACAN to remodel the joint. So please go to my store and get the collagen. You take, depending on the severity of the joint, but the normal dosage is 2 large droppers. So please go to my store and get the new product, collagen. And like I said, you can stack it together with the collagen. Now, omega-3 will help with your cardiovascular health. This will bring down systemic inflammation, help you to improve your lipid profile, and reduce plaque formation. Super important. And omega-3 reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells, so it reduces overclotting. So please go to my store, get the omega-3, improve your cardiovascular health. So a great stack to help with your joints and your musculature and your bone density, collagen, help to remodel the joint, the collagen, and to help with your cardiovascular health, omega-3. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order.
Welcome back. It's time now for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me now is UBS Managing Director and Senior Portfolio Manager Jason Katz. Also with us is Mark Tepper this morning. Great to see you guys. Thank you for being here. Jason, welcome to the conversation. We are talking about markets that are pulling back. Futures indicating a decline at the start of trading this morning. The Dow was down better than 450 points yesterday, and it is extending that sell-off this morning with another decline of about 180 right now. The S&P 500 pulled back yesterday from the record levels that it hit the day before. And as you can see, the Dow was down 466 yesterday, the S&P down 23. FundStrat's Tom Lee, though, is talking about the January effect and zeroing in on the first 5 trading days of the new year. He says that does set the tone for what comes next. If you look back all the way to 1950, when markets are higher for the first 5 days in a new year, the major indices average about 16% gains for the year, with an 84% win rate here. This setup this year is especially rare, Tom writes, saying that we are coming off of 3 straight years of gains of 15% or more. How are you reading this early 2026 setup, Jason? Does this pullback that we've seen and are seeing this morning matter? Or is the bigger trend of the January effect still holding in your mind?
As somebody, Maria, provides counsel to individual investors over 30 years, frankly, I try not to look through the rearview mirror. Yes, history oftentimes can be a guide, but like you said, there were 3 unbelievable years in the market. So when you have President Trump talking about a ban on single-family homes from institutions or a crackdown when it comes to buybacks with the defense industry, sure, that's going to be a reason why we get a little bit of a reprieve, but we remain very constructive going forward for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important point that you bring up. The president is basically saying in an executive order, I don't want big Wall Street institutional investors to buy single-family homes. Big institutional investors are not buying the homes so that they can have their family there. No. People buy single-family homes to live in them. And he wants to ensure that the supply of those single-family homes is flowing and that we have enough supply in the market so that rates go lower. He's also talking about dividends and buybacks in the defense sector, saying, look, we can't make our defense equipment and the military equipment fast enough. We are not even, he didn't say this, but I know this, we are not even ready today to actually push back on China should China go into Taiwan tomorrow. Because we don't have the necessary military equipment and weaponry because we can't make it fast enough. So he's basically telling the defense companies, stop with the buybacks, stop with the dividend payments until we know that you're investing enough in that. And you think these are 2 negatives for the year?
I don't necessarily think they're negative, frankly. I think they're positive for the country. With respect to the defense industry, the budget's close to $1 trillion. So this may be cause for a little bit of a reprieve in those shares, but counterbalancing that is a very dangerous world, and we need our defense contractors. And with respect to the housing industry, the big institutions, well, frankly, the big private equity firms that are publicly traded, they're not forced to sell what they currently have. That'd be an act of Congress. That would face major legal challenges. Counterbalancing that, great capital market activity this year. With lower rates, you're going to see the monetization of a lot of the assets they own in their fund, boosting their profits.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know Blackstone is one of the largest owners of real estate, single-family home real estate. So you're hitting exactly where the president is talking about. These major alternative firms.
They were trying to corner the market.
Private equity firms are buying homes. Meanwhile, Mark, we're on the doorstep of fourth quarter earnings. The major banks will report their earnings next week. JP Morgan Tuesday, followed by Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citi on Wednesday. America's largest banks expected to see higher fourth quarter profits because of a surge in investment banking revenue. Deal making has been accelerating. Analysts believe loan growth and higher net interest margins will also boost results. But the financials have been down. What are your expectations for the fourth quarter earnings, Mark?
I absolutely love financials here. I mean, when you think about those companies that are going to most benefit from utilizing AI within their company to drive more productivity and more profitability, the banks are really front and center. And obviously, yes, I mean, investment banking revenues should go up throughout the course of the year. We have a few clients ourselves that actually finished M&A deals in late 2025. I think we're going to have even more in 2026 as well. And that's indicative of a strong economy. Beyond that, when you look at these big banks, and we own JP Morgan, we own Citigroup, and then we own PNC as a regional bank, when you look at everything they've got going on, it's not just the investment banking, it's not just the productivity gains that'll come from AI. There's also going to be substantial revenue increases coming on the wealth management, asset management, investment management side of the equation, as more and more investors are bailing on bond ETFs or positions that might pay a lower fee, and they're moving into equity positions and or even some of these alternative ETFs, which are now coming out with even higher fees. So that is going to help banks as well.
Well, I mean, look, also the SEC is making it easier to own privates. So some of those firms that you're talking about are also investing in private companies and seeing good returns. Hey, Jason, there's been some action in biotech this week, in the last couple of weeks. A surge in biotech M&A certainly taking shape. High-profile bidding wars underway, intensifying competition for next-generation assets. Signals some momentum here in 2026. Deal activity expanding beyond oncology and immunology. Growing interest in obesity, metabolic, respiratory, and neuro treatments. Eli Lilly reportedly nearing a deal to acquire biotech Ventyx Biosciences for around $1 billion. Ventyx Biosciences was surging over 35% on the news yesterday. Eli Lilly also higher by better than 4%. And you've got AbbVie denying that it's in talks to buy Revolution Medicines, pushing back on a journal report saying that discussions were advanced. Jason, what do you make of all this activity, this flurry of activity in biotechs right now?
I'm hardly surprised. Deregulation is leading to capital market activity, IPOs, mergers, acquisitions, and in the healthcare industry in particular, with the convergence of AI meeting medicine, sequencing of the human genome, there's an unbelievable opportunity there in a sector that is woefully undervalued relative to the rest of the market. And the big pharmas have dwindling pipelines, so the way for them to fill those pipelines is to engage in M&A and buy them. So it's not a shock by any means.
Yeah, would you buy biotechs right now?
I'd buy them certainly as a basket because, as we know all too well, picking single stocks could be a very binary reaction. But healthcare, biotech in particular, especially with the aging baby boomers, there's a huge constituency of people who need these treatments as they get older. So yes, the answer is I would buy the group.
Yeah, I mean, look, well, there's a lot happening. We've also got new dietary guidelines from Secretary Kennedy, which we're going to talk about later. Jason, great to see you. Thank you so much. Mark, you're with us all morning long, and we are grateful. We will take a break and come right back.
I didn't think shingles would make me miss days of work. I was wrong. Talk to your doctor today.
Capital formation or new funds formed in the lower middle market to compete against us.
Why is that? Why are other funds not focusing or looking at the opportunities available in the lower and middle market?
So they were, right? The bigger funds, whether it's Blue Owl and others, were monstrous in size, how big they grew, were going into the lower middle market and were stretching when the capital was flooding in. Now that the capital has started to stabilize and or decrease to an extent in private credit, probably from all the headlines across Bloomberg, showing, look, there are cracks in the lower middle market, or there's cockroaches, as Jeannie Diamond says, that has slowed the flow of capital. So what that does is it creates opportunities, right? Spreads start widening back out to normal levels, and the bigger players focus on the more liquid parts of the market, which are the middle and upper markets, the broadly syndicated market, rather than really focusing on what we started in 2008 when I started the firm, $200 million fund in the lower middle market. That's where the greatest returns were back then, and we've deployed assets and grew to $7 billion. We're finding that same story play out again today.
So in other words, they are going to the safe havens.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, exactly.
So Len, I mean, who do you compete against? Like, where are the banks these days in your market? I mean, if I want to go do a deal, I don't create a development or something like that, I go to my local bank. Where are the banks these days?
Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I think they're. Let's go to live now here. I
I think they're doing a conference here.
And without any impact to civilians. That's the way it's supposed to be done. And that's the way we kept New York City safe. 6 months ago, our officer was enjoying a Saturday night in the park. And when he was attacked, it was an attack on all of us. And we realized we had to restore public safety and the rule of law. Our mission is clear at CBP. Our mission is to protect the homeland, safeguard the borders, and endure economic prosperity. But this mission was more narrowly focused. This mission was about protecting the citizens of New York and ridding ourselves of these horrible individuals. Now, we came up with the name Salvo because the name means a lot to us. Salvo, first and foremost, the term our officer received salvation that night by the grace of God and because of the incredible support from the NYPD under leadership of Commissioner Tisch and her team, who was out there picking up our officer and bringing him to a hospital. So we thank the NYPD for that. Salvo also references a term of simultaneous discharge of guns in battle. And that's what happened that night to our officer. And he was so courageous in getting shot in the wrist and in the face and still firing back. He's a hero to us, and he inspires us each and every day. And finally, we felt the need as a premier law enforcement agency with our partners to unleash a salvo of justice. And so by using intel-driven operations, data-driven targeting capabilities that are second to none, we went after individuals who are illegally here and many who have criminal records. It was an incredible operation done by working with our partners, realizing that these individuals were affiliated to the Trinitarios gang. And when we realized that, then we did what CBP and our partners do best. Get at the root cause of the problem. Go after these transnational criminal organizations by getting at their networks. And each and every day we would pick off one or two.
I'm going to pivot over to Fox News, where Turley is talking about the reckless rush to feed rage.
Clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers.
Today, rising tensions in Minneapolis after an ICE officer fatally shot a woman, DHS declaring it self-defense, as the city's Democratic mayor fans the flames, saying he's not buying it.
Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull to ICE. Get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley joining us now. And Jonathan, I hear the mayor, but does it seem that he's prejudging an investigation, calling BS on self-defense?
Griff, he certainly is doing that, and it's reckless, and it's a repeat of what we've seen in the past, where these Democratic politicians rush to feed the rage, and the result is often riots. The fact is that under the standard of Tennessee versus Garner, this does appear to be a justified shooting. Doesn't mean that that's how it will work out. We need to see the ultimate conclusions of the investigation. It'd be good to see some more videos. But what we have so far does seem to meet that standard. You can slow down the video. I mean, many of these people on the internet are slowing it down, making it look like these officers had time to go get coffee, debate what to do, come back and shot the woman in the head. I mean, the fact is that this was a blink of time. It was not a second, it was a fraction of a second. And the courts have said repeatedly that they don't second guess these split-second decisions. They look at whether an officer could reasonably believe that he was in danger and others might be in danger from this action. Now, I expect there will be lawsuits here. It does appear that Good was trying to evade, to flee from the officer. She was told to get out of her vehicle. You are not allowed to shoot someone in flight simply because they're in flight. But if a car is barreling towards an officer, that car may be treated as a weapon under the governing case law.
And so let's walk that back just a little bit, because on the flip side, it occurs to me, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the lawyer, I'm not. First of all, you cannot impede or obstruct a federal immigration action investigation. She's got her car in front of the ICE vehicle and blocking it. Second, when instructed to step out of the car to make an arrest, she disobeys, also not legal. And then thirdly, she speeds away. And if, as Paul Morrow said, the shots were fired to the windshield, that would put the officer in the line of the path of the danger of the speeding away car. Have I got that correct?
You do, Griff. And I've represented legal observers at protests. And I have to say, this is not the conduct of a legal observer. This is someone who is obstructing. This is someone who is a participant. When I've represented legal observers in the past, we often stress that these are individuals who are trained not to put themselves in the path of officers, not to become part of the protest, but to do as they are claimed to be doing, that is to observe. So I don't think the legal observer status is going to have an impact here in terms of the outcome of the case. Now, in terms of what happened before, it is the totality of the circumstances. These officers were dealing with a mob that had formed when they were trying to get a stuck car out of the snow. This person was blocking them. She did disobey orders. Now, having said that, flight alone is not sufficient. But under Tennessee versus Garner, if in that flight she is barreling towards an officer, he is allowed to protect his life and the life of others. So I don't think this is going to work for people like the mayor and the governor suggesting that this is murder. It's not. Also, they cannot try this officer in state court. He has immunity. What you may see is civil lawsuits from the family, and that's going to hash out exactly that critical moment and whether the officer was justified. But from these videos, he does appear to be within the standard of Tennessee versus Garner.
And it does appear that at least the director of the Department of Public Safety in Minnesota says they're not commenting because anything else would be speculation. The local leaders, the mayor, the governor, apparently not heeding that advice. Jonathan Turley, thank you for your insight, as always.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. This will help to rev up your energy levels. The first 4 B vitamins improves your mitochondria. It helps with the electron transport chain, so you're producing more ATP, so your cells will have more energy. The vitamin B complex revs up that cellular metabolism, and vitamin B12 helps to protect your neurons. So it's really important to take vitamin B complex every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Protect those neurons. Another great way to improve your brain function is to get proper sleep. Go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower that will allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep per night. So you're detoxifying your central nervous system, consolidating memory, and you're well rested. When you do this regularly, you will have better brain function. Please go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. Take it every night. And a very powerful neurostack, Clarity Factor, gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate. When you take this regularly, you're going to improve your neuroplasticity. You're going to increase the dendritic connections that you have. You're going to be able to think faster. You're going to have better memory. Please go to my store, get the Clarity Factor and a great stack. Get rid of that brain fog, be able to concentrate, improve the neuroplasticity. Get the Clarity Factor. To get better sleep, get the Goodnight Formula. And the vitamin B complex revs up your cellular metabolism and protects your neurons. It's a very powerful neurostack that I just been telling you here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Now, some people, they'll write nasty grams saying, this is an infomercial. No, it's not an infomercial. I'm telling you on how to improve your health, boost up the immune system, because there's an awful lot of people that are going to have AIDS-like syndrome, cancers, early onset of dementia, autoimmune disorders because of the crisis that we went through in 2020. And I spend almost every day telling people on how to improve their health. If they don't improve their health, it's their own damn fault. Now, if you pay attention to what I've been saying about the market, you'll actually be able to make some money. With that, the S&P 500 is at 6,924. If you notice that Bitcoin is at 91,000 and oil is at 57.08. I have a target for the S&P 500 year-end target at 7,400 to 7,800 for 2026. All right. There's a major resistance level at 7,000. This is the reason why we're not at 7,000 yet, because it's getting close and then it comes down. It's getting close, it gets coming down. Once the Federal Reserve lowers rates, we're probably going to break that 7,000. Now, I suspect that we're going to have a 50 basis point cut by the Federal Reserve in 2 installments throughout 2026, but not this crazy like 100 basis point move. But when they do that, it's going to be very bullish for the market. Now, if you paid attention to what I just said, you can make a lot of money.
After a woman was fatally shot by an agent, CBS's Usher Qureshi.
Over the last few hours or so, we started to see the growth of people coming to visit this memorial where she was killed. As for that ICE agent, not much has been revealed about him. His identity has not been shared. We know from 2 federal sources that tell CBS News he's part of an ICE enforcement and removal operations team. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said the agent was taken to the hospital and later released. But still, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger growing here in Minneapolis.
Minnesota officials say they can't access evidence after the fatal shooting, and the FBI won't work jointly on the investigation. U.S. Senate just passed a measure that
Okay,
would
we're going to
limit
listen
President
to
Trump's
Ian Bremmer. Was it Ian Bremmer? Yeah. Ian Bremmer on CNBC.
7:30 Eastern, only on Prime. Let's bring in your Asia Group president and founder Ian Bremmer, talk about what has changed in just the last few months here, Ian, and where we're headed next. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What's involved in making sure this happens in Venezuela, regardless of how long it takes?
Well, what's this, I guess, is the question, right? I mean, there are a lot of different goals. We should first note that President Trump wanted Maduro out, and that was a big part of what he's focused on. And so that's where the effort was, not so much on what the plan is for governing, what comes next. And now everyone else wants to say, well, what's going to happen in Venezuela? Trump doesn't really care who governs it, but Marco Rubio does and wants to ensure that there's some kind of a transition going forward. That's going to take a year or so, and the nature of that transition is going to be important for companies that are going to be investing long term. By the way, so too is the Dawn Road Doctrine. I mean, Trump is gone in 2029, but the oil companies that go in will still be there for much longer. Well, is that still going to be U.S. policy? Is the U.S. still going to control through its military the outcomes on the ground with the Venezuelan military, security services, the colectivos, and the Democratic opposition? I mean, these are really cool. I'd love to see long-term guarantees from the U.S. government. Whether they're going to get them or not is an open question. Look, Trump is always looking for deals, but he's looking usually for headlines. So what he wants to do is offer announcements and pronouncements that may not actually meet. What they say, objects in the mirror are larger than you think. I mean, this is the way I think the announcements will go. He said 50 million barrels of oil being guaranteed by the Venezuelans. The conversation in reality was like 15 to 25. I suspect that there's going to be a lot of showmanship and less actual details and execution capacity that comes out of a near-term meeting.
Ian, what do you make of the jawboning around Greenland and what really may actually happen there, given the importance that would represent for the dissolution of NATO?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't lead to the dissolution of NATO because there's not going to be American airborne troops assaulting the territory. And, it's like everyone asking about, well, would Russia, if they send tanks into Poland or the Baltic states, is that, going to be World War III? No, because Russia doesn't send tanks in. They're not stupid. They use asymmetric warfare. That's precisely the point, is Trump is asking his people to put together a plan for how he can take Greenland without actually invading it. And that's much harder for the Europeans to effectively respond to. He does want it, and he wants it for reasons that I frankly can't understand. Because we know that all of the real national security concerns that the Americans should want to have addressed, even though neither Trump in his first term nor Biden actually did anything about it, could easily be addressed by picking up the phone and talking to America's NATO ally, Denmark, which includes the territory of Greenland, part of NATO, right? And so what it feels like Trump wants is to say that Greenland became American under Trump. And, that honestly is not in America's interest, that's in Trump's personal interest.
What we're looking at behind me now is the Black Angel.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew.
The future of Obamacare may ride on what happens today. Welcome to the Thursday edition as the House prepares to vote on reviving subsidies to help people cover their rising premiums, with passage riding today on how many Republicans are willing to buck President Trump. That also goes for a war powers vote. They just took a procedural vote in the Senate, as we will discuss in a moment with Bloomberg congressional reporter Eric Wasson. The president says U.S. oversight in Venezuela could last years. We've got new details on the operation that brought us to this point with Bloomberg's Jamie Tarabay. And as the ICE shooting in Minneapolis becomes the latest political Rorschach test, we'll talk about it later this hour with our political panel. Here we go again. We start on Wall Street. Charlie Pellet has the latest on the markets for us, with no real direction so far. Charlie, what are you looking at?
Right now, looking at developments out of Venezuela. Joe Matthew, thank you for asking. Venezuela starting the release of an important number of foreigners and local prisoners. That, according to the president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, who spoke on state television. He says, quote, "Let this gesture by the government be considered the contribution that we all must make to ensure that our republic continues its peaceful life." Again, those headlines now on the Bloomberg Professional Service. We'll keep you posted with more developments as they become available. U.S. markets right now trading decidedly mixed. The Dow surging 49,290. The Dow up 294 now. Gain of 0.6%. S&P fluctuating. Right now, the S&P is down 0.5 point, 69.20 where we stand. Just about flat on the day. NASDAQ, though, slumping 138, a decline there of 0.6%. Big tech certainly weighing on the indexes and averages today. NASDAQ 100 index down 0.7. Interestingly, those small cap shares are surging, outperforming up 1.1% right now. The 10-year, 4.16%, with the 2-year, 3.48%. Spot gold up $4.50 the ounce, 44.61, up 0.1%. Silver at 76.27 now, down 2.5%. And West Texas Intermediate crude 57.10 the barrel, up by 2%. Right now, the markets are pricing at about 2 rate cuts from the Federal Reserve this year. Fed Governor Stephen Myron says he'd go a lot further than that.
I'm looking for about 1.5 of cuts. A lot of that is driven by my view of inflation. I gave a speech about this about a month ago in December at Columbia University. My view is that almost all of the excess inflation over target is due to quirks of how we calculate inflation.
Fed Governor Stephen Myron interviewed this morning on Surveillance. By the way, you can watch the full conversation on YouTube on the Bloomberg Podcast channel. Defense stocks are rallying today as President Trump signals plans to ramp up military spending. Among some of those defense names, Lockheed Martin shares are up by 4.3%, Northrop Grumman up by 3.6%. Also keeping an eye on Kratos Defense and Security Solutions That stock surging 16.5%. We got you covered on all the markets, and for on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. Back we go to Washington, and once again, your host, here he is, the Thursday edition, Joe Matthew.
All right, yeah. Charlie, you ever seen a whiplash like that with these defense stocks last night? That was pretty hard to follow. First, they go off the cliff after the president says you can't do buybacks or dividends. The shorts all show up. Then he sweetens the pot in the Pentagon spending to $1.5 trillion. So my question for you and anyone else who's playing along here, was this the ultimate short squeeze?
Well,
or is everyone piling long into these defense contracts?
I will answer the other part of the question. Have I ever seen it before? Yes, I have. As of yesterday, case in point, housing stocks. Blackstone up 1% right now. Also, shares of Invitation Homes, they're up by 0.9%. So yes, quite a reversal there as well.
No doubt. BlackRock, Blackstone, two different companies. A couple people learned that in the last 24 hours. And thank you for being with us. Here we go again. Fasten your chin straps. A lot of things about to happen here in Washington, D.C. And something already has happened, which we're going to talk about in a moment with regard to war powers. But of course, this is the big day. Before we went away for the holidays, this was the big day. Everyone said the discharge petition would bring Obamacare back to life on the floor of the House when I believe it was 3 Republicans managed to push that over the line. Now we're going to really find out how many are in favor of this idea. The procedural vote pointed us to potentially a bigger number here. As the House moves ahead on reviving potentially the enhanced Obamacare subsidies that brought us to this point, the House, the key word there, the Senate is another matter, although we did hear from Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, earlier today. Listen.
Democrats are going to make health care and other high costs, the high cost of living, the #1 issue for all of 2026. The average American family, there are millions of them discussing this right now. How are we going to pay the bills? And every day Americans are saying to their elected officials, do something about it.
Well, they're going to get a chance to do something about it. Around 4:30, we understand, p.m. Eastern Time. A little more than 4 hours from now. This is big enough news that we're going up there for the late edition of Balance of Power. Join me, live from Capitol Hill, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a good sense of what's going on by then, assuming that things stay on time. But that's not where we start today with Eric Wasson, because something else important is cooking in the House. Make that the Senate. That's the War Powers Act. There is another one in the House that's going to move today as well. But we just got a procedural vote on Tim Kaine's bill. And we were watching a number of, well, I can call them moderate Republicans, in some cases conservative Republicans like Josh Hawley, who have been very concerned about the administration's moves in Venezuela. So we just saw a handful, 5, I believe, Republicans vote with Democrats to keep this alive. Bloomberg congressional correspondent Eric Wasson joins us right now live from Capitol Hill with the latest on this. Eric, it's good to see you. Before we get to healthcare, tell us how important this is and who flipped on the Republican side.
I think it's a really serious shot across the bow of the administration that, they accept the capture and arrest of Maduro and his wife, but they do not want to see boots on the ground. We saw that after a classified briefing yesterday for all senators, members coming out saying they don't see a realistic possibility of a U.S. invasion. But the president continues to say things like we're going to run Venezuela, even making comments in the New York Times, we're going to be there for years. And then we see this bill. We saw Todd Young, somewhat moderate, Indiana Republican, and Josh Hawley of Missouri. Join Collins, Murkowski, Rand Paul, who typically votes for these and is an isolationist, to bring it over the line. This was a real, a signal. And then they came out afterwards saying, this is not about the successful raid that took place. Would they commend that? But the issue is, are we going to have a forever war? So this will come to our final vote next week. We might even see more people vote for it. We may see an amendment. It would have to go to the House, and the president issued a veto threat. So, the way this would work is that the House and Senate would have to override the veto to really restrict the president, to stop him from going in. At this point, it doesn't seem likely, but it sends a political message. It says, look, this is not popular, and we're getting nervous about it.
Wow, this is something. Okay, so you've got 5 Republicans here, and if you were just listening to Eric, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Todd Young, not shockers, Rand Paul, not a shocker. Josh Hawley is meaningful. We didn't see Tom Tillis turn over, but again, this is going to be a full floor vote next week. Eric, I'm looking at a statement from Susan Collins of Maine. I believe invoking the War Powers Act at this moment is necessary. She writes, given the president's comments about the possibility of boots on the ground and a sustained engagement running Venezuela, with which I do not agree. Boots on the ground, I get. The president just told the New York Times it could be years of oversight. Is that what spooks Republicans?
Yeah, and look, Susan Collins is the top Republican appropriator. She and others have been asking, how much does this cost? How much does this flotilla cost off the coast of Venezuela? If we're going to extract oil from there, will we have a Navy flotilla there in perpetuity? They can't get hard numbers. I've been told it's being, drained from the operations and maintenance, the regular account at the Pentagon. That's going to have to be backfilled at some point. So these people are, wondering how much is it going to cost. And we've seen before the idea that oil, in Iraq would pay for something didn't pan out. They want hard numbers as well on the loan guarantee potentially to oil companies. What really are we talking about? There was floated the idea that the money from oil sales will go to an offshore bank account, not subject to congressional appropriations. That's what happened in the Iran-Contra affair. I was in middle school, probably most of our listeners weren't even born yet. But this is a very controversial and probably illegal thing that they're talking about. So I think there's a lot of emphasis from Collins and other appropriators like Mr. Murkowski.
Well, you bring up a great point. I've been asking repeatedly, what do we think this is costing on a daily basis to keep this armada afloat off the coast of Venezuela? Someday we'll probably see a number, Eric, and I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but we did get a number today on healthcare, the enhanced premium subsidies. This is from the Congressional Budget Office, which I know Democrats and Republicans never agree on. But CBO says the 3-year extension that they're going to be voting on in the House later on today would cost the government $80.6 billion between 2026 and 2035, as the number of people with health insurance increases by several million, up to 4 million by 2028. So what's going to happen here, Eric? It looks like we've got enough Republicans to pass this, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to comment on that number. Democrats are pointing out, look, the Trump administration yesterday said for next year they want a $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget. It's a $600 billion increase for 1 year. That could end up being $6 trillion over 10 years compared to this 80 over 10 years, billion dollars. So I think Democrats are saying, look, the order of magnitude is so great, but they're choosing to spend on, fancy weapon systems, potentially occupying foreign countries, buying Greenland, which doesn't seem to be something that Trump really ran on, versus healthcare costs. You had Schumer there saying they're going to make this a centerpiece of their, political campaign. But the interesting thing about today's vote in the House, look, we had 9 Republicans join Democrats to move this forward yesterday. The sponsors, the moderates who care about this issue, want to see 20 or 30 Republicans get on this bill today. So we're looking very closely when it comes to the substance of Obamacare. Do we see more Republicans go on? That gives more momentum to these Senate bipartisan talks. I just talked to Gene Shaheen a little bit. Doesn't know when they're going to have a draft. Susan Collins doesn't know exactly, but Angus King told my colleague that the next week we'll see a draft, bipartisan, moderate, probably a 2-year extension, some fraud controls, maybe some squishy new language on the Hyde Amendment. That's the big sticking point. If that, gets some traction, Moreno has told people, I think it's 35 Republicans. We can see a Senate vote on that and kick it back to the House, and the pressure's on Speaker Johnson. They can do another discharge petition. That's the long shot way. I still think it's unlikely, but the long shot way Obamacare gets revived, the Obamacare tax subsidies.
Well, there's a state of play from Eric Wasson, and we're, as I mentioned, about 4 hours, a little more than that, away from the vote. Eric, just quickly, I've only got 10 seconds. How many Republicans do we suspect will vote for this? Is it going to be 9 like the procedural vote?
I'm expecting more, but the blue data is 15 or 30. Yeah.
All right. Wow. All right. I'll meet you up there a little bit later. Eric Wasson with us live from Capitol Hill. And again, we'll have the late edition live from right where Eric was just standing, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That vote will likely be underway as we find out in real time exactly what the appetite is here on both sides of the aisle to extend Obamacare subsidies. Much more to follow as we turn our attention back to Venezuela next. Only here on
It's 12:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We're looking at gains as of now for the S&P 500 index, just about the best level of the day, up by 4 points, 69.24 where we stand on the S&P. Little change there, up under 0.1%. The Dow, though, pushing higher, up 328 now, up by about 0.7%. Certainly a lot of defense names ripping higher today. NASDAQ, though, big tech tumbling. NASDAQ down 110, down 0.5%. The NASDAQ 100 index slumping now by just about 0.6%. Tech giants NVIDIA and Apple both slumping, but the Russell 2000 index of small cap shares up by 1%. Again, keeping it all in context, S&P little changed, up under 0.1%. 10-year at 4.16%, with the 2-year currently yielding 3.48%. Spot gold little changed as well, up 0.1% right now at 44.60 the ounce. Silver is tumbling 2.2%, 76 even for an ounce of silver. West Texas Intermediate crude oil, though, surging 2%, 57.13. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, and other American oil companies are examining what role they can play in helping revitalize Venezuela's energy industry. His remarks came in the wake of discussions with oil companies about returning to the country after the U.S. capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Shares of those oil companies right now, Chevron is up by 1.7%. Chevron, by the way, does have an existing license to produce and export oil out of Venezuela. ExxonMobil up 2.5%. ConocoPhillips up now by 4.3%. Coming up in just a moment, we'll have a whole lot more on the security situation in Venezuela. So again, recapping both the Dow and the S&P, they are higher as of now. S&P little changed, up 1 point, under 0.1%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. Balance of Power continues right now. Back to go to Washington. Once again, your host, Joe Matthew.
Okay, Charlie, we do thank you. Charlie will be back in about 20 minutes with more on the markets here as we track the Thursday trade together. Live from Washington, thank you for joining us on the Thursday edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. If you're in the car, channel 121 on your satellite radio, and we're always streaming live on YouTube, or we invite you to find us by searching Bloomberg Business News Live. We'll save a seat for you in the studio. Coming up at the top of the hour, 1 o'clock, not just Charlie's update on the markets, but we expect J.D. Vance to be in the briefing room today, which is interesting because a lot of people have been asking, where's J.D. Vance? Specifically with everything that's been going on in Venezuela, and there have been questions about whether the administration was intentionally trying to keep him away from this whole thing, save him for 2028. Not based on the rhetoric we've been hearing in the last 24 hours from the vice president. Says he loves what's going on in Venezuela, and I suspect he'll double down on that when he reaches the podium. We'll see how that times out. Maybe we'll walk in the room together and check on things. But of course, the administration's been spending a lot of time talking about the operation, a lot less time talking about what the heck happens next, although the president did tell the New York Times in a multi-hour interview that U.S. oversight of Venezuela will likely last years. That was the word that he used, having suggested it would be indefinite until now. But let's get back to what happened on Saturday morning. This is at least what the president continues to do in conversation, because it was remarkable what our U.S. military pulled off. It was a lot harder than some people probably realized. Come Saturday morning, we're learning now that one of our helicopters was badly damaged, along with the pilot who was the leader of this operation and was quite heroic in dealing with the fire in Caracas. Now, the president also talked about something you're not supposed to talk about, and that is our offensive cyber capability. As he says, we knocked the lights out for this operation, And the only reason we know about it is because, well, of what Donald Trump said on an open microphone. Listen.
152 airplanes, many, talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. They knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. You know, our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and they're not protected, and they were, but it was so brilliant. The electricity for almost the entire country was, boom, turned on.
Cut the lights, as he says. Bloomberg's national security reporter, Capital Influence reporter, Jamie Terabay covers this for a living and is with us now. Jamie, it's great to see you. Welcome back. Last time you were here, we were talking about your scoop on cyber.
That's right.
And the contracting that the Pentagon is in the midst of right now with some third parties. We're not supposed to know about this, right? For all we know, there was a missile that hit a generator somewhere, but the president said it out loud. So what have we learned about what we're capable of?
I think that's a really good point, is we're not supposed to know, and there's always enough plausible deniability. The said, well, we don't really know what could have actually happened if there's always intermittent electricity power cuts in Caracas.
It could be any old thing.
It could be any old thing. One of the things that we know happens, and this was sort of quaint military speak when General Dan Kane gave his Joint Chairman of Chief of Staff and gave his briefing, and I wrote this down because I wanted to get it right. He was talking about when the 150 aircraft, which was extraordinary, as you said, it was across, it was fighters, it was intelligence, it was surveillance, it was reconnaissance, it was rotary rings, it was unmanned drones. And this line, I'm just going to read it to you so I don't want to get it wrong. So as they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other agencies to create a pathway overhead.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of chatter about the failure of the Chinese anti-aircraft systems that Caracas has around the capital, and that a lot of these planes were actually there to jam all kinds of signals. So I think it's very clear that the electronic warfare aspect was very present and very active in this operation.
Should the president not have said what he did? Or do people know this? You just don't say it out loud?
Well, I mean, honestly, everyone expected the lights to go out when Russia invaded Ukraine a couple of years ago, because it actually managed to take the lights out in 2016. But since then, Ukraine learned, the US came and helped them. Tech firms came and set up in Ukraine to help get their electricity grids and, to sort of boost their cyber defenses to prevent an attack like that happening. And it didn't. So you should be able to know what's happening in terms of your critical infrastructure and failures. But the sort of the cyber nerd in me thinks if they have exploited a vulnerability to do this, then that's one and done, and they'll never be able to use it again. So they'll have to. Maybe they have a whole sort of stash of them.
Right. Well, once you show your hand on this, you need to find a new way around it. Is this possibly what the CIA operation that the president said was actually confirmed was underway on the ground might have been about? Or is this something that happens in real time when we go into attack?
So we've all been trying to figure out what happens, and it's very clear that this is months in the planning, right? So the CIA was there for months beforehand, and as General Kane said, they got so much incredible, valuable intelligence. They knew where Maduro was. They knew what he was wearing, what he was eating, what kind of pets he had, right? So the granularity of the detail here is really, really interesting. While they're doing that, the military is doing their thing. The Delta Force guys are doing their thing. They're practicing on mock-ups, like, during, for example, a Abbottabad raid, when they went into Pakistan to do the Osama bin Laden raid, they were practicing on a mock-up village compound sort of thing, and they're doing exactly the same thing here. So they have playbooks that they follow, and a lot of different processes that come into bear, and then, as General Kane said, it was the sort of the symmetry and the way he said if one part failed, it was all going to fail. We couldn't afford to fail.
Well, and then we learned that one part almost failed. The lead helicopter was shot and the pilot was hit 3 times in the leg.
Yeah.
This chopper could have gone down. This was a Chinook, I believe. There were a lot of people aboard this thing. Also pretty amazing to learn we had 80 people on the ground when you talk about that Delta Force raid, and they were in a real firefight. I think 60 people were killed on the other side here. What do we know about that helicopter? How close did it come to being disaster? And do we know about the pilot? What condition he's in?
My understanding from the reporting that we've seen from the New York Times is that the pilot was shot 3 times and was wounded, but he and another service member were also treated in the hospital. But yeah, like you said, I mean, not only did he manage to land the aircraft, get everyone off, he also managed to get it back into the air and fly it away, which did not happen in Abbottabad. We had a down chopper which they had to destroy to not be able to not sort of betray any intelligence capabilities when they did that. So this was incredible on so many levels, and it really, really tells you the detail of planning and preparation that went into this, because it was, you're going into a compound, you know you're going to meet a hostile force. This isn't, you know, and then to have like the president and his wife just give up and go into custody. I think President Trump sort of gave the Godspeed message at 10:46, and then by 3:29 a.m. they were across the water back to the Iwo Jima.
Absolutely incredible. So, you know, our audience should know that you've had a lot of years, and before you came to Bloomberg, you've spent a lot of time covering combat situations, and you were in embed for years in Iraq. There have been a lot of comparisons to Iraq. And I bet some of this bothers you, and maybe some of this hits home. But politically speaking, when you consider the de-Baathification of Iraq, or this would be the de-Chavistization of Venezuela, or whatever we're going to call it, what do you make of the decision to leave the rest of the regime in place, and what might need to happen next?
I think here's military operations are, if they're successful and they're fast and they're quick, I think it tells you a lot about the sort of the political landscape of the place that you have gone into. If there's no resistance, right? If the local forces, law enforcement, you know, fall apart, it's because they don't really have buy-in with the regime. We've seen very short, successful military incursions. That's the easy part. I mean, it's not, but that's the easy part. Governing is hard, right? And if you've left all of the elements in place, we're already seeing you know, protests. We're seeing a heavy military presence inside Venezuela. We're seeing reports of security being beefed up, people being held and detained and questioned over their, you know, support of what happened. The thing that I have a lot of questions about is when the administration says we're going to be running Venezuela for years. So one really important point is there's 3 years left of this administration. So what does that mean? Is that going to be something that the administration that comes after is going to be prepared to do? And we've seen Donald Trump himself say that, you know, the Iraq war was dumb and we need to get out of Afghanistan. So whoever comes in after could be saying, I don't want to have anything to do with Venezuela. I'm anti-expansionist and we have to wrap this up. I think that there's definitely not enough detail about what comes next. We're hearing a 3-phase plan. We're hearing there's a lot of confidence. But if you've left the regime in charge and you expect free and fair elections, I don't think that those two things really go together.
All the while, in our remaining moment, Maria Machado remains in hiding, right?
Right.
That could lead to protests in the streets and any number of political complications as this moves forward.
I think we're seeing enough political crackdowns now that should give anyone pause about the idea of sovereignty. Sovereignty for any country against an invading force is a really powerful thing. It's what spawned insurgencies in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. So it's really where, I mean, the military has this thing called lessons learned, where they look back and they go, what did we do wrong, and what are the counterinsurgency methods that we've used that work and haven't? And you know, and you have to kind of look at this and think, is this conducive to what we want it to be? But the other part of it is no one wants to be installing a leader, because then that will be tainted by association as well.
We're going to keep talking about this. Please come on, Ed.
It's amazing what the military accomplished in Venezuela to capture Maduro. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. This will soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, help with your immune system, improve your endocrine system. And by taking this regularly, guess what? You're helping your cardiovascular system, and you're slowing down the aging process. Boosting up that immune system is super important. Turmeric soaks up free radicals, brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. And when you do this regularly, it's going to help with your immune system, your cardiovascular system. And ashwagandha root controls your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels, bringing down inflammation and helping to prevent plaque buildup. Now, when you stack these together, it's a very powerful stack to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And by bringing down inflammation, you're helping your neurons. Chronic inflammation cerebrally will lead to your neurons to degrade. So it's important to keep inflammation down. And some of the two major vectors for aging, chronic inflammation and a buildup of free radicals. So if you're soaking up free radicals and you're keeping the inflammation down, you're slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the ashwagandha root, get the lignans and the turmeric, go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. It's really simple. If you take the supplements the way I'm telling you, you are going to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. And you're going to get all these other benefits, helping with your brain function, helping with your cardiovascular health, helping with your bone density, helping with your immune system and your endocrine system, helping with your metabolism. If you pay attention, you will slow down the aging process.
It's 12:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long. Here at Bloomberg, we've got the S&P and the Dow both higher. NASDAQ 100 in the red. And the Russell 2000 index of small cap shares, it's rallying by 1.1%. Big tech stocks weighing on equities as traders locked in profits after a strong rally in the AI trade. S&P right now up 3 to 69.24. That's a gain of under 0.1%. The Dow up 345, up 0.7%. Nasdaq down 125. The Nasdaq Composite Index, a drop there of 0.5%. The Russell 2000 Index of small cap shares up now by 1.1%, while the Bloomberg Mag 7 Index is slumping by 0.1%. Both Nvidia and Apple are trading lower. The 10-year 4.17%, with the 2-year at 3.48%. Spot gold up $5 the ounce to $44.62, up by 0.1%. A retreat for silver, down 2.5%, $76.23 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude right now at $57.32. That is a gain of 2.4%. Defense stocks rallying today as President Trump signals plans to ramp up military spending. Shares are rebounding from that drop yesterday when the president called for curbs on executive pay and shareholder returns in the sector. Marianne Bartel is his chief investment strategist at Sanctuary Securities, and she was a guest this morning on Bloomberg Open Interest.
Everything that's going on has not yet affected corporate earnings. Now, in terms of the original statements by President Trump about not being able to pay dividends, that could impact, corporate earnings, right? Or, pay scales. So you saw the stocks go down, but then the next announcement came out that maybe defense spending should be higher, and that positively affects earnings, and we saw the stocks go up.
Sanctuary's Marianne Bartels. Indeed, Lockheed Martin up now by about 4.5%. Northrop Grumman shares, they're up by 3.5%. Recapping, stocks are trading mixed. With the Dow, the S&P, they're both higher. We've got Nasdaq trading lower. Nasdaq down 0.5%. S&P keeping it all in context, up by about 0.1%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Pellet. Balance of Power continues right now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your host, Joe Matthew.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much, and thank you for being with us here on the Thursday edition of Balance of Power. Already been an interesting day here in Washington, hasn't it? With this War Powers vote, a procedural vote granted, passing the Senate with 5 Republicans earlier. This sets up a floor vote for next week. We'll be talking about that more as the day goes on. Working our way toward a healthcare vote in the House. We're going to be up on Capitol Hill for the late edition of Balance of Power. That's supposed to happen around 4:30 or 5 o'clock Eastern Time. This is the vote to extend Obamacare subsidies. And very much like the War Powers vote, we'll be watching closely to see how many Republicans might want to vote for this. 9 voted for the procedural vote yesterday. So just keep all of that in your pipe. You can smoke that later. As we consider what's happening in Minneapolis today, there's a lot of plates that we're spinning here, and this one is the most recent political Rorschach test that we've had put before us here. This is, of course, the shooting that brought hundreds of people to vigils and protests last night in Minneapolis, an ICE agent shooting and killing a 37-year-old woman who they say was trying to run them over. Now, this is delicate stuff. Nobody's going to be happy with the outcome of this conversation because nobody agrees on it. And when I talk about the Rorschach test, everyone's doom scroll this morning was the same, right? You get on Twitter, maybe you're healthier than I am and don't do that in the morning, but you get on social media and you start scrolling. And you don't have to look at the names of the people who wrote the posts to understand whether they're Democrats or Republicans, because their take on this, having seen one video or another, is probably going to ride on what you think about this administration. That in itself is probably a problem. But it's where we start our conversation with our political panel today, because everybody's got a hot take on this. And as I mentioned, about 15 minutes from now, Vice President J.D. Vance is going to be in the briefing room at the White House, having spent a good chunk of his evening last evening talking about this on social media. The administration is calling this domestic terrorism before anyone has a chance to investigate anything that happened in the street yesterday. And for a sense of the rhetoric here, we can start with the locals, if you will, in Minneapolis. Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, spoke about this, as did Tim Walz, the governor. Listen.
They don't tell us they're coming. They don't say why they're sending the largest deployment in American history to Minneapolis. They're not They're not making us any safer. We don't have any of that coordination. They should be talking to us when we do these things.
What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people.
Enter Kristi Noem. The Secretary of Homeland Security obviously sees this a lot differently. She's been speaking as well. Listen to her from her briefing yesterday.
ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents.
Now, I want to be clear. We're not going to solve this today, and we're not going to debate what actually happened there yesterday. This is not CNN, and we are not forensic analysts. And by the way, if you've seen the videos that everyone's making these lofty conclusions on, they're not great. They're all from weird angles, and they're grainy, and you can't really tell who's saying what or doing what, with some exceptions. Get a sense of what happened there, but to actually make a ruling on this is pretty difficult right now. I'm more interested in the political reaction and the lack of patience with this whole thing, and it's where we start with our political panel today. Adam Hodge is with us, Democratic strategist, Bloomberg Politics contributor and managing partner at Bully Pulpit International, and Matt Terrell's back, Republican strategist, managing partner at Firehouse Strategies. Gentlemen, welcome, and I appreciate your grace in dealing with a very sensitive issue here. Adam, give me your take on this, first of all. Even the president was quick to weigh in here. In fact, he had a New York Times reporter in his Oval Office yesterday and had a laptop set out here with a video on it to prove what he thought happened. How dangerous is this moment that we're in?
Well, Joe, I think you are giving us the right guidance here, and it's where I start. 3 kids woke up this morning in Minneapolis without their mom. And that's sobering for anybody, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of your political views. Their lives are changed for forever because they're not going to grow up without their mom. I think you take a step back from a political standpoint. There's no question that the raids that ICE has been conducting around the country has poisoned the political well, but it's also actually hurt the president's standing on this issue. He took office and immigration was one of his strongest issues. He was well above 50% approval for his handling of immigration issues. If you look at polls today, that's not where he is. He's underwater on this issue. And so I think that incidents like today are only going to further stink his standing on this issue, because the American people can look with their video, as you said, with their own eyes and come to their own conclusions. But there's no question that the broader chaos and theme around on American streets is not something that the law and order president claimed he was going to put in place. Quite frankly, it seems there's more chaos. You have American citizens being gunned down on their own streets.
Matt, this is not something I was looking forward to talking about, and I'm guessing that goes for all 3 of us here. I want to keep this to the reaction that we've seen so far, and I wonder if this says more about us as political animals here in this country, or some other phenomenon that is causing us to reach for blame so quickly.
Well, first of all, whenever you have loss of life, that's never a good thing. And, what you are seeing, though, just talking about the politics, and to your point, in question is that this is largely falling along partisan lines. So obviously you're seeing the Democrat mayor of Minneapolis, seeing Democrat Governor Tim Walz come out with their statements on this. It's clear where the White House and the administration stands. They're doubling down on the notion that this was somebody who was using a vehicle as a deadly weapon, standing behind this law enforcement officer and what he has done. And look, the American people to make their own judgment, but here's what we do know. We know that the issue of immigration and border security was top of mind among voters in the last presidential election. That issue of security and safety, I think, still is top of mind among Americans right now. You're seeing recent polling that shows that roughly 80% of Americans view crime as a major problem in large U.S. cities. You're seeing, obviously, the issue of border security is still top of mind. So as we look to the next election, look, no question, affordability, prices, the economy be top of mind. Obviously, the safety and security of Americans will as well. But it's clear that the administration is going to stand with its law enforcement officer. I think at the end of the day, Americans have to make their own conclusions, but that's where this lands right now.
In some cases, people feel less safe when they see these masked ICE agents. The optics here are very difficult. Is there another way for the administration to approach this?
Well, I do think it is along partisan lines you're seeing the criticism here. But with that said, I think in terms of optics here, it's important for the administration to message what they are doing and make it clear that with every situation that they're engaged on, that they're putting the interest of the American people first. Obviously, the situation here where you had an individual who was killed, but again, based on the administration's stance on this is somebody who's using that vehicle as a deadly weapon, and this administration is going to stand with law enforcement on this. There's no question about that. You saw that in the Secretary Noem's statements just yesterday as well. In the end, it's going to come down to where the American people stand on this, and I think the thing that President Trump's going to point back to is what is being conducted here, and that is trying to shore up and secure our border. Obviously, President Trump campaigned on the notion you have people in this country who were brought to this country illegally under President Biden over a wide open border. That's one of the issues that he won on. He has a political mandate right now, having won the Electoral College and the popular vote in the last election, to conduct what he is doing when it comes to border security and immigration. Obviously, loss of life is never something you want to see. Thoughts and prayers, obviously, with the family member.
Well, you have a tragedy like this, Adam, and it starts to raise obviously a lot of questions that we're asking here today. If this were an accident, we'd be waiting for a reconstruction crew, though, right? There is much more to follow here. There will be a forensic investigation, and I'm sure the police right now are gathering tape from everybody who was there. They're going to have a 360-degree angle of everything that happened. They're going to reconstruct what happened. They're going to interview people. That could take months or even years. Tom Homan, at one point yesterday, the president's border czar, said we should wait for the results of that election before he changed his statement on that. Adam, at some point, somebody's going to be wrong here. To what extent will that bring political liability?
I mean, Joe, unfortunately, I think you're already seeing it, right? I mean, it didn't take the reporters who are doing their jobs to find this woman's ex-husband, who said she's not a political activist, doesn't have an activist bone in her body. She's a mom of 3 kids and had just dropped one of her kids off at school. So, that undercuts this idea that they tried to spin over the first 24 hours about her being some sort of domestic political terrorist. But Matt, the point before, I think was onto something, though, on the broader political atmospherics here. President Trump didn't win the election. He campaigned on these issues. He said he was going to solve these problems. We're now a year in, and people are going to ask, like, did you do the job you said you were going to do? And he famously said he'd solve it overnight, like that. And we're looking at the midterms, and people's support on immigration has softened. And people are going to rightly ask, okay, you said you were going to do this. Are our streets safer? Or do we feel safer with masked agents kidnapping people and throwing them in moving vehicles? Or, unfortunately, some people losing their lives. And so that is, I think, where Democrats, if you're thinking about it, again, I hate to make this turn into political, but where this is a political show, the Democrats have a way to articulate an offensive message on this issue. It is that the Republicans and President Trump are not actually making our streets safer, that we would have a more humane way of dealing with the immigration crisis. And we have to politically find a way to be smarter about talking about these issues, where we are solving the immigration problem without creating chaos on American streets.
We've been talking about Minneapolis a lot for a lot of reasons recently, and we were all struck to learn this is, I think, a mile away from where George Floyd died. Should President Trump go to Minneapolis? Would that have an impact to show up in person, to talk to the people there?
Well, it's up to the president to make the decision. I think it was smart to have Secretary Noem there yesterday.
Yeah.
And look, I think one thing that matters here is not just the record of politicians working to protect the American people. I think many would argue, those who vote for President Trump, that he's been trying to do that day in and day out as president, but their rhetoric as well. And one thing I think you see right now is obviously rhetoric. And many would argue that the rhetoric that Democrats, for example, have put out there as it relates to law enforcement, as it relates to ICE agents, has not been helpful here. People would point to what the mayor of Minneapolis has said about ICE agents, about law enforcement, that only incites violence here. And I'm not suggesting that that's what occurred in this situation. We need to let the investigation take its course.
Yeah.
But the rhetoric matters right now when it comes to law enforcement.
Well, I appreciate both of your views on this, Matt and Adam. Like I said, this isn't easy stuff to talk about, and I appreciate
I personally believe that the ICE agents were in total justification because her life was in danger. And she shouldn't even have been there. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients that will target multiple systems. They'll improve your brain function, help with your cardiovascular health, help with your musculature, help with controlling your A1C levels, rev up your metabolism, boost up your energy. This gives you a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day, no spiking. You'll feel the effects of this within 72 hours when you start taking it. You'll have more vitality, more energy, you're gonna be more active. If you take this throughout the whole year, you will notice that you are thinking better, sleeping better, and healthier. Your immune system and your endocrine system will be better. It'll help to bring down inflammation. And so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. I also have C60 that you can stack with the Boomer Boost. C60 is a strong antioxidant. You take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning. If you work out, take it before your workout so you recover quicker. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. C60 has to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day and it's going to soak up those free radicals, bring down inflammation in your cell. When your cell is soaking up those free radicals, your mitochondria is going to be improved. The health of the mitochondria will improve. You'll have more ATP, more energy. And over time, what's going to happen is your immune system and your endocrine system will improve. This also helps the basal layer of your skin, so the skin will improve over time, so you will look younger. In addition, at the vascular level, by soaking up free radicals, you're reducing plaque formation. And at the brain level, by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you'll have more neurotransmitters, healthier mitochondria, you'll have better neuroplasticity, you will think faster, you will have better memory. It's really simple. Take this every day for a year, you will look younger. Teaspoon a day, you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, follow my protocol, take a look at the products that I have on my store, and they will improve your health. And if you stack them, the way I've been saying in this video, you're going to see radical improvement in your health. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my broadcast. Please share the links, ask your social media to follow me, and get the products, get healthy, follow the protocol. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.